We'll call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take the roll.
O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
DeZiel.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Atkins Hoggett. Here. Hall.
All right, we have a few different presentations. First up is Manufacturing Month Proclamation.
I've got it. Whereas the city of Hudson is home to numerous manufacturing facilities, and whereas these companies and their talented employees produce high-quality goods that are distributed throughout the United States and across the globe, and whereas these manufacturers employ hundreds of area residents, and whereas local manufacturing fuels local economic growth, both through the employment of Hudson area citizens and through the creation of local sector jobs that service the retail and recreational needs of these employees, and whereas local manufacturers require employees who are often trained in their crafts at area secondary and post-secondary educational centers, further adding to the economic impact of their manufacturing efforts. Now, therefore, the City of Hudson, Wisconsin does proclaim the month of October 2019 as Manufacturing Month in the City of Hudson and call upon all citizens to acknowledge and recognize the important and vital role the city's manufacturing facilities have in growing and maintaining a vital economic base for the City of Hudson, giving under the mayor's hand and seal of the city this 21st day of October 2019.
Come forward.
Pictures?
Yep.
All right. I'll get out of it.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, was there, okay.
Do you have a proclamation or something that you can kind of present?
Great. There you go, Mayor.
Sure. We have one here that I signed.
That's right underneath.
Okay. And who wants to? Ruby?
One, two,
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wastewater treatment plant improvement project presentation by SEH. Kip?
Good evening. John Friel is here with SEH to make a presentation on our upcoming wastewater treatment improvement project that we have. This presentation will include design, timeline, costs, estimated increase to the users. The last improvement of the Hudson wastewater treatment facility was in 1996. With that, the City of Hudson initiated a preparation of the facilities plan for the wastewater treatment plant in order to address key concerns surrounding the age and condition of the existing wastewater treatment infrastructure. This report discusses the existing wastewater treatment facilities, projected 20-year wastewater flow, inorganic loadings, future wastewater needs, and costs of alternatives to meet those needs. So with that, as soon as John is ready, it's about a 10-minute presentation that he'll give, and then if you do have any questions, feel free to ask us, and we'll do our best. So.
All right, thanks, Council and Mayor. I've got about 10 slides, and I've also got a video so that you don't have to just see PowerPoint slides about wastewater. I'm going to cover a little bit of the brief background, the history of the wastewater facilities improvements, and then show you a drone video, which we took an aerial drone video of the existing wastewater plant to kind of get a background of the existing plant, and then we imported some of the 3D design that we've been developing for the improvements. And then I was going to touch on the project schedule, where we've been and where we're going, and then touch on project cost and financing, and then available for questions. So as far as the brief history goes, the Hudson Wastewater Facility was originally built in the 1950s. There was an improvement in 1980 to expand the capacity, and then in 1996 there was a regional biosolids facility constructed, and Hudson was one of the charter members of that. And then in the late 1990s was the last major improvement project, which expanded the capacity of the Hudson plant up to 2.2 MGD. And that flow and the organic load has met the capacity up to this point, and is projected to meet it for the next 15 to 20 years. Most recently, SCH, working with Kip and Joe, we prepared a condition assessment report in 2018, which kind of assessed the infrastructure at the wastewater plant, and then prioritized where there was a need for improvements, either by their condition or their capacity or their age. And then from that, we moved forward with the facility plan. And the facility plan, one of the main purposes for that is it's required for DNR clean water funding. So the report kind of follows the guideline as far as what needs to be included to meet the DNR requirements. But with that, we held a public hearing in July. And then also with that, we compared the major improvement alternatives. And we came up with 3 major areas that needed improvements to extend the life of the plant and condition and stay where it's located. And then since that time, after we submitted the facility plan to the DNR, we've worked with Hudson to develop the design documents, the construction documents, to meet the most current funding deadline, September 30th, to get it in the queue for DNR review, to get that funding, which is low interest loan. So the 4 major improvement areas include a new preliminary treatment system building. That's a big part of it, probably the only major element of new construction. Then we're rehabbing the sludge thickening area within the existing sludge thickening building. And then we're converting the dechlorination system to a UV disinfection system. And we're also, with that improvement, we're also raising the hydraulic grade line of the facility to help with drainage through the outfall line. And then we also have other plant-wide improvements throughout the plant. And there's about 13 areas in the plant. And so we numbered those 1 through 13 to kind of designate areas, process areas, either tanks or buildings. And so with the drone video, we kind of have labels showing 1 through 13. And I'm just hurrying just so you can get to the video. Kind of to be a spoiler, so around 30 seconds, we kind of fly in and then go from the north end to the south end. And on the north end, there's the chlorination tank, and it changes to the UV disinfection channel, and then kind of a storage shed for the lamps when you don't need to disinfect. And then in the middle of the video, we get to the middle of the plant where there's it kind of shows the inside of the sludge thickening building. So there's kind of a gray circular tank and piping that we're replacing, and so that's kind of a major rehab in that. And then towards the end of the video, on the south end, is where we're modifying, there's kind of a long maintenance garage, and we're keeping half of that, which has a chemical area, and then a backup generator for the plant and a portable generator stall. But we're demolishing the south half, and within that footprint, building this new pretreatment area, and that's going to have screening and grit removal that'll meet the same capacity as the rest of the processes, but it'll be newer, have better ventilation, have odor control, and it will replace the existing pretreatment system that was kind of wedged into that existing original building. So with that, I'll let you watch them. So there's where it flashes to the green space and the UV channel. And then that's where it shows the gray improvements, the sludge thickening. So here's where we're demoing the south half of the garage and showing the new pretreatment building. I think that's better than listening to me for 20 minutes. Show you a video. Okay, so then as far as the project schedule goes, we just submitted the documents to the DNR. That included the 90%, 95% documents that I stamped as the professional engineer. And then we also had the clean water funding application for the funding. We're looking to get to 100% documents with Kip and Joe to kind of finalize those, and then we're going to wait for the DNR comments and incorporate any major comments they have, and then that'll set us up for looking to advertise in December, January, to ultimately start construction this spring, and then the construction is going to be about a year and a half. As far as the cost goes, this is kind of a lot of stuff on there, but in general, the overall cost is about $12 million. It's broken out in this table, the 13 different or 14 different areas, including site work, and then engineering, and then there's actually kind of a larger contingency that rolled it up to the 12 million. And that estimate was based on, now that we've done 90% design documents, we have a better handle on what the improvements are going to be versus the facility plan. And then this slide, which is pretty much the last slide, we were just showing scenarios of the first column shows if it was all financed by Clean Water Fund loan, that loan right now has a market rate of 3%, and then with DNR funding, you actually pay 55% of that market rate, so it's actually 1.65%, 20-year loan, and then this table shows the estimated annual increase to fees or quarterly increase to fees. And I'm ready for any questions.
Anybody?
Based on your experience, what's the probability that we're going to get the clean water funding?
My understanding is last year, Kip and I did the intent, the perf and ITA submittal, and Hudson's on the list. We met the facility approval and the submittal deadline, so we should be getting the funding. So I would say, yeah, it's
Okay,
100%, yeah. So.
excellent.
What year did the fees actually kick in?
Yep. So I'm going to confirm that. So essentially, we submitted the funding application. I think we'll be looking at drawing from the loan once the construction starts. So we're looking at April or May, depending on when the contractor starts, when you would be requesting loan disbursements. So then I think before that happens, to do the loan closing, we're going to have to show how the project's being financed. And so so that's what I have to confirm. But I think that basically that'll start kicking in this spring if the project starts in the spring.
Two questions. One is, how much better is this technology now than like when we upgraded in 2000 or 97 or 96? Sorry.
Actually, a lot of what was put in the late 90s is still typical and best practice. I think the only thing we're incorporating here is the UV disinfection. Chlorine is still used, but this allows you to not worry about a chlorine residual with using UV. And then you have seasonal limits, so you're actually only disinfecting during summer months, in late spring and early fall. So that was one of the things is by our projections, you have enough capacity for the next horizon. So we weren't looking to expand, and then by not expanding, you're not looking at more stringent limits. So we wanted to be as cost effective as possible. So.
And the second question is,
And I'll just add on that, our pumps, our motors, our VFDs, our control panels, everything down there is 20 plus years old. So you can imagine, what that is, trying to find parts and get repairs on it and things like that. It's no different than your computers and things like that. They're designed for a life cycle. That stuff does run 365 days a year. It doesn't stop for anything. So a plant is designed for 20 years. This one's at that point. It's time, to start upgrading this stuff. With the new motors, pumps, different things like that, there would be, they're obviously going to be more energy efficient than they were 20 years ago and things of that nature. But just in terms of that, it's very, very outdated.
And then one thing to add to that too, that we're doing, we are actually doing plant-wide improvements on the lighting. So we are going to LED. So that'll be an energy efficiency upgrade that makes a lot of sense.
okay. And in big picture, are we thinking, is the plan that, how many years moving forward do you think in terms of, here's the next upgrade? Are we talking 20 years, 30 years?
Well, the facility, the plant, all the studies that were done are currently indicating that that plant should be good until 2040, which is a 20-year life cycle of a wastewater treatment plant. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to, to run for 20 years, and then they're in need of an upgrade. Or 25,000 people is what our studies are telling us. So you've got to remember that we do take in North Hudson and things like that. So we're right about that 18,000 resident mark that we're taking in on a daily basis. We take about 1.6 million gallons a day go through that plant with a capacity of 2.2. So we're not increasing capacity. So we are getting to that point, with all the additions that are happening in town and all the building that's happening in town. We are going to get there. And when we reach that 25,000 mark or the year 2040, there's going to be some decisions again that are going to have to be made to where if we can upgrade that plant and make it larger, to accept more wastewater, or do we go with a satellite plant somewhere, on the outskirts of town that we could use and then use this as like a clarifying type plant or something. So, and that's a completely different subject. There's a lot more involved that would have to happen at that point, so.
But yet this upgrade would fold into whatever upgrade that would need to be?
Yeah, it would fold into it. I mean, we're at the point where that thing is, it's just falling apart down there. It's constantly, I had the utility commission, we've toured it a couple different times. It's 15,000 this week, it's 25,000 next week, for pumps and motors and controls and panels, and, it's just time. It's falling apart. You can drive by it and see what dire need that thing is, even without going inside. So, but yeah, I mean, all of the technology that we're rolling in today would definitely, well, in 20 years, I don't know, it could be obsolete again, to where we might have to do something. But again, that's a completely different, situation that we deal with at that point. Once we get to that magic 25,000 number, we will have to have a discussion on what we want to do at that point.
But Kip, you feel like the upgrades basically will buy 20 years? Is that
Yes.
correct?
20 years or another 7,000 people,
Okay.
7,000 plus.
In terms of this project schedule, how closely are you coordinating with the DOT for the reconstructive?
We actually, this project was actually not going to happen until 2021. We moved it up to 2020 because of the scope of this thing and what's going to be happening down there. And we didn't want to be in the way of DOT coming through. So by the time DOT comes through in 2021, we'll have, our major stuff will be done. It'll be more interior work. We've already set the site up, or we will have it set up to where we can have a different access point, so we don't have to access off Highway 35. So our construction can continue type thing.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was definitely thought of.
Anything else?
So the financial chart, what are you looking for? What are we looking for, a recommendation?
No, we're not looking for anything tonight. Basically, tonight was just information for you guys. We are actually going to be conducting here in probably the next 2 months a wastewater fee study, and what would our new rates look like with this project. Like John had mentioned, it's a $12 million. We know what the project is. We know it's going to be $12 million. What we need to figure out is what's the best way to spend the money. We do have money, we do have some in the bank, but are we better off taking that 1.6%, which we're never going to see again on any other project, or do we put money towards it? That's what we need to look at. We are going to be doing, like I said, a study on that. It's probably going to be about a 2-month study that'll come back with recommendations on best ways to fund this, and also best ways to fund other projects. We do have the Highway 35 project, like Bill said, coming up in 2021, where we're looking at about $1.6 million in wastewater underground projects at that point. So, we have big stuff coming up here in the next couple of years, and we need to figure out how to pay for it and how to be smart paying for it. So that's what we'll be looking at in the next 2 months. Once we get that study completed, it would definitely come back to you guys, because you're the decision makers on how we're going to borrow money and how we're going to pay for this stuff. And then at that point, you would have something way more concrete. This is just kind of what you've seen tonight is just, here's $12 million, here's what it looks like, here's what the user rate potentially could be in a quarter, an increased potential could be in a quarter. That's not guaranteed. We know that, but we just wanted to give you something, just to show you what this project is going to cost and how we're going to try to pay for it. So.
Anybody else? All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next presentation is Hudson Bicycle and Pedestrian Web Map presentation.
First of all, hi. My name is Tiffany, if you don't know me already. many of you already do here. I'm the city planner for the city of Hudson, and I will be presenting on the master plan web map application. But before I get started on that, I wanted to kind of go over some of the background of the advisory committee itself, as well as the master plan that we're proposing to do. So without further ado, let's get started. So the Hudson Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I actually have a couple members behind me here, as well as Jim Weber from the council. It was first established on March 30th, 2015. It's a little hard to read, sorry about that. The purpose of this committee is to make recommendations to the Hudson Plan Commission, as well as various other city committees, such as Public Works, the Public Safety Committee, and the Park Board, regarding cycling and pedestrian issues affecting the city of Hudson. And their mission statement is to make pedestrian and bicycle activities safe and accessible for all while improving the operation of bike and ped facilities. So then we go to the goals of the committee. The committee's goals kind of cover a large swath of items, as you'll notice, including trail sidewalk development, maintenance, tourism enhancement, promoting multimodal transportation throughout the city, creating safe environments for trail and sidewalk users, participating in intergovernmental relationships with neighboring communities like the town of Hudson, town of Troy, participating in working with local private entities as well on facility creation and improvement, and then finding funding opportunities for bike ped related projects. So that brings us to the master bike ped plan and why we've identified a need to create one. So the committee actually is comprised of about 6 members. We actually have an opening on the committee if anybody's interested. But it's comprised of local residents who are very passionate about bike ped improvements within the city. And with that kind of passion comes many ideas. So ideas are kind of bounced around the committee members on a lot of things that should be improved, where problem areas are, and etc. But the discussions kind of always end there with no further discussion on like how to get from point A to point B, or what resources we could use to make these ideas become reality. And so it was due to this that staff recognized the need for master bike ped plan. Additionally, too, if we had a plan in place, we'd have more stake in getting funding from grant organizations and such. So this being the first of its kind for the city of Hudson, there is no other bike ped plan for the city at this time. So this is kind of innovative a little bit. With it being the first of its kind, it'll give the city some direction on where to make improvements in bike and ped infrastructure, guided by the goals of the committee, as well as public feedback that's received through the process. So, as you can see, the plan would include, went too soon. It'll include an introduction, as well as related plans that we'll dive into a bit more from Wisconsin DOT and the county. It'll also go into some goals and objectives that we kind of outline. And then there will be some planning criteria and types of bike ped facilities that we could have in mind for improvements. Then, with the help of the feedback, there'll be the existing conditions and opportunities. So the feedback we get will actually help kind of identify problem areas that we could improve upon. And then from there, we will come up with some recommendations and an implementation plan that will kind of direct how things will go in the future. It'll kind of give a timeline, provide some funding opportunities through other grants that we could possibly apply for specific projects. And we'll also kind of identify too if there's any sort of intergovernmental relation we could form with whether the county or the town of Troy on specific projects in mind. So now we can start talking about the web map application. Now you got all the background you need. So who will use this web map? It's open to everybody, basically. Anybody that lives or does business within the community is welcome to use it. We're also open to feedback from neighboring towns' residents because of that intergovernmental relationship aspect in place. What information does this collect? There are about 4 different things. Date of submission, which is actually an automatic thing that gets filled in on the form. The age and mailing address of the person filling out the form, and the multiple choice selection of various improvement opportunities. Now, the age and mailing address is not actually going to be made public to anybody. That information is only for my eyes only. So nobody's information will be shared publicly at all. So yeah, now we can go ahead and just jump right into the application itself. Here you'll see a giant title, Bike Ped Master Plan 2019 Public Input Map. Below that, you'll find a thank you message from us, the committee, thanking people for participating in the feedback form, as well as kind of giving some idea of where this input is going to be applied to. I gave my phone number and email address so that people can contact me in case they have problems with filling out the form in any way. I do check my email quite often, so I'll be timely if people do have questions. So here we have the first section, which is entering the information. As you can see, when you open the form, the date of submission does automatically fill in. I opened this earlier just so I could fill in some of the details myself beforehand. How old are you? I inputted my age, then address in here. You can put whatever your address is, your mailing address. It is a required field, so you do have to input that before you can move on. Then here are like all the listed options that you kind of have. I'm sorry, they're really small. But there's about 8 of them. There's like resurfacing existing trails and sidewalks, new trail sidewalk request, stoplight signage request, street lights, other improvement requested, handicap accessibility improvements, crosswalk request, and pedestrian amenities. And then there's a little description at the end of each one that goes into further explanation of what each of those is, just in case people don't understand the lingo. Then here you will find additional space for people to explain what they want to see specifically, so they do have the opportunity to describe in further detail what they want. So then, before they actually fill out these 2 lines though, that and that, I recommend that they go down to the map first and kind of zoom in on where they want to focus their attentions on. So with that, just zoom in on the map, go to wherever you want in the city. We'll go up to, I don't know, I've heard a lot about the YMCA intersection, so we'll go there. And we'll put point right there. Simple as that. Then you can go back up, go back up. Say that you want, I don't know, stoplight signage request. You can do that. And if you want to provide more information, you can. We'll just do that. There is one cool feature, though, that I would like to talk about, though. With the map itself, you have the opportunity to actually, wherever you're located, there's GPS units kind of in your technology, in your cell phones, iPads, laptops, computers, whatever you have. You're able to actually use that locate me button and just press that and it'll locate to wherever you are and it'll drop a pin automatically right there. So ease of access. Then once you're done with that, you can go ahead and submit the entry and then it's all done. If you want to view the map, you could go ahead and click that view map button in the lower left corner. So we'll open it up. And that green dot right up here is the one that was newly created. So if we click on it, you'll find that it gives the date, the comment type, and the further comment. So you'll notice age and mailing address is not given, so people will not have access to actually click on that and figure that out. So like I said, I'm the only one that has access to that. Yeah, that's pretty much the application. Any questions?
Questions?
I guess my question would be, Public Works walked the entire city sidewalk?
Yeah, so.
Inventoried, am I right?
Yeah, that
inventory
inventory that was done a couple months ago, that study by SEH, yeah, that'll actually be included in the master plan itself too.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how does this add to what Public Works has already done with that?
It'll kind of match up with what they've done in itself. So like if there's any recommendations that they proposed, we would include that as well. And if residents have concerns that they've pointed out that kind of agree or go in line with what SEH has proposed, then that would be probably like outlined as more of a major topic of discussion or like a major project that would need to be done first before others in a priority listing.
Well, and if I could too, I think this actually, we hear from the user, you know, whereas we're not hearing from the engineer that we paid to do the study, they did a great job, but we actually hear from people that are out using our pedestrian and bike facilities. And, you know, you can identify trends, you know, I think you'll see, you can look at the map. We all know those areas in town, but it'll be really interesting to see if there are some other areas that maybe we haven't identified. And, you know, I think that's the useful part of this tool. I want to thank the committee for working so hard on it. I know Marion and Jim and Devin and Tiffany and everybody's been working hard to get this out there. And this is kind of the first of several different maps that'll be available to our citizens and visitors to, you know, showcase what we can do with GIS and some of the mapping technology that we have. It can be such a powerful survey tool. It goes beyond being just an analysis tool. It has so much more value in public input and in participation. So,
Can I ask what the data that we're collecting with the required fields? So you mentioned that address is a required field. Was age as well, or is that an optional?
Nope, that's
so
not
what
optional.
is the hope of our use of that data after we collect all the addresses of the people who have participated?
I think largely we want to know what our own residents think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too. We don't want to see a situation where potentially the survey could be gamed by, you know, a specific interest group, or, you know, we want it to be as accurate and as representative of a tool as it can possibly be. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Plus
if they
two.
don't live here, you want to know that too.
Yeah.
And their opinions are certainly valid. I'm sure that their opinions are going to be a little different than some of our residents. So it's going to be good to have all those.
Sure.
Yep.
I know that sometimes if I'm required to give some information, that might make me shy away from participating.
Sure.
Some people, everyone's different with that, but I just wondered if that was a consideration.
It certainly was. We actually had a couple extra additional fields in there before that we took out. And if we don't see the response that we would like, then we can tweak it. The beauty is it's a web app that you can, you know, that any of us can go in and change it to make it more user friendly.
Tiffany, she recently accommodated that with the design as well. You have notes while you're taking the survey. It's hard to see on the screen, but she reminds the user that that information is not going to be shared.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Tiffany.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody that helped work on that.
Thank you.
All right, public hearings. First public hearing on zoning map amendment application from R1 one-family residential to RT transitional two-family at 1031 2nd Street, J. Clarraine. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment? Please identify yourself, give your address.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Joel Kulo. I live at 1100 2nd Street, which is directly across the street from the subject property. I lived there for 25 years with my wife, and this is the first incident that I've ever felt compelled to come and talk before the council as part of a open mic. I'm opposed to the redesignation of the zoning. When I got the original letter, at first it looked a little benign. I thought, oh great, we're gonna change the zoning from a single family residence to a two-family residence. But it took a little digging on the council's website to find out, or the city's website, to find out that the RT transitional actually allowed a business to operate out of that currently a residential home. So then that made me think that's possibly the reason behind that is to allow it to continue to be used as a rental property, like a Verbo, vacation rental by owner, or an Airbnb type business, which it currently is operating as, even though it is a residential home. So I wouldn't be so opposed to it being rezoned to allow for a two-family rental unit strictly without the option for a business to be run out of it, because rental properties, you become familiar with your neighbors, whether they're a rental or an owner. There's some, give and take between neighbors. I'm not opposed to my neighbors, being boisterous on occasion or having parties, being loud, having a dispute. But the people that live next to this property now, we live with that every weekend. Every weekend there's a bachelorette party, or there's a bachelor party, and there's a family reunion. Occasionally there'll be a smaller group of people, but especially in the summertime, you got your windows open. The people who rent there can't smoke, so they come out on the porch. And this is a regular occurrence. So the largest problem with this type of business that I'm opposed to is because there's no supervision of the people once they rent that unit. It's not like a bed and breakfast or a motel or a hotel, where if the clientele gets a little out of hand at night, start celebrating or become a little too loud, there's nobody to mitigate that behavior like you would see at a bed and breakfast. If the tenant or the bed and breakfast owner is living there, they're going to knock on the door and say, "Excuse me, can you keep it down a little bit?" Where there's no control of that now. People come to this location and they think, "Oh, party time." And as a neighbor, if you try to say something to them, they're offended. They feel like, I paid good money to come here and party, to have my bachelorette party or my bachelor party. And so the neighbors get put in this uncomfortable situation where we have to knock on the door and approach the offenders or call the police. And that's not really effective either. A couple of years ago, there was a huge kegger party there in that house. There had to be 30 or 40 people that showed up for that party. I called the police multiple times that night, and other neighbors did as well. And when the police would arrive, everybody would scramble inside, shut off the lights, and lock the door. The police would knock on the door, and no one would answer. They were smart enough not to answer. The police would leave, and then they'd flow back out into the yard. That happened like 4 times that night, until finally they got wise and they decided we better leave. And I watched the people leave that house. There was probably at least 30 or 40 people that left that house. I could go on and on about other incidents, parking problems or incidents where there's people drunk in the front yard. One day I came home on a Friday night. There was probably 40 people in the yard as part of some family reunion. It's a big enough facility where I don't know how many people can sleep in the place, maybe 10 or 12. But it's large enough, it has a large enough venue for a yard. You can organize a big party. People come from other places where they're staying. They celebrate their event, and then they leave. I just don't think it's an appropriate place for that type of business. And again, I'd be concerned if the zoning changed to an RT, that then potentially both halves of that unit could be changed into a rental property. You could have 2 sets of clients coming in on any given weekend. Right now, part of that facility is rented out, the way I understand it, to a full-time rental party. So I think approval of the rezoning would be a terrible precedent for Hudson, as there appears to be no obstacle for approving or disapproving future requests if this one is approved. I looked on a map. There's only a few residents, I think, in Hudson that have this RT designation. And I could maybe understand it if you're really close to the downtown business district and a homeowner's trying to keep some value associated with that property and change it over to have a business where maybe you have an investment company operating out of it, or some type of business where it's a daytime operation. But this is a nighttime and a weekend operation, and it's negatively infringing on the neighbors. So, this business has been operating for years, and I think the fact that these problems have occurred shows that this business model is a failure, and so I don't think we should change the zoning to encourage it to continue as such. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Matt Mackey. I actually live directly next door to the house, 1101 2nd Street. This all started because, as he was saying, he's the neighbor across the street from us. There's a lot of drinking, and one day, it was a Saturday, there was probably 12 to 15 guys in the front yard, all drinking tequila, They had a boom box set up on the front porch with beanbag toss out in the front yard. I had worked all morning long, and I walked over and very kindly said to him, you know, hey, I've been at work all day long. Is there any way you guys could quiet down? I just really need to go rest. And this 3 guys came up to the edge of the property line, and they said, why don't you come over here and try saying that to me? And that was a physical threat, obviously, that really scared me. And it was at that point, you know, living next door, I have 2 teenage kids that both come home. One works at Menards, one works at a care facility up by the YMCA, come home at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I'm not comfortable with my 17-year-old daughter on a Friday or Saturday night coming home. My wife and I are afraid to go out to a movie. A simple thing like dinner and a movie, we don't do because we want to make sure we're there when our daughter comes home, and when she parks her car, she makes it in the house safely. And it's just not a way that we should live. You know, my understanding is he's supposed to live in this house. He hasn't for 4 years. You know, he's given me the phone number. I've exchanged many texts with him, some good, some bad. The most recent situation was right before my 30th high school reunion. I texted Jay at 3 o'clock in the morning. There was about, I'm guessing, between 10 to 15 girls. They had been drinking downtown all night long. 3 o'clock in the morning, they were from the front porch to the sidewalk, seeing who could carry who without falling over because they were so drunk. Of course, they're screaming at the top of their lungs and everything else. And I called the police. This is on record. The time before that, the week or two before that, my wife called me crying. There was 30 to 40 people again in the yard. She had to work in the morning. The cop that responded was upset at us for calling. And I didn't find out later until I actually talked to, I believe it was the police chief, and don't quote me on that one, but I actually called, you know, the following Monday, and he clarified that it wasn't, the police officer's job was to come to make sure that they weren't doing something illegal, you know, it was within quiet hours, this sort of thing. So he said to me, you know, if it gets out of hand, you call us, I'll talk to this police officer. Well, it wasn't a week later that here I'm calling at 3 o'clock in the morning and the cops stormed up from behind the house. Jay's response to me was, I went to bed at midnight, I tried to install a door buzzer, tell them to go inside, but I went to sleep. So it's just been, I don't even know how to describe what it's been like. My wife has flowers, if you've ever been by her house, she works religiously on the flowers in the front yard. There was a guy about 2-3 months ago in July who drove his pickup right through my wife's flower beds. And when my wife ran out and said, hey, you just drove, he's like, oh yeah, whatever, and then moved his truck out of the way. So she spent Sunday out redoing her flowers. The one thing that I guess my biggest concern is my own personal safety. I don't feel safe in my house. I've lived in Hudson for 22 years. I've paid taxes. I've raised my children here. I plan to live here till I'm dead. I've lived next to that house with 3 other landowners. You know, it's been single family, it's been just fine, and now all of a sudden it's this gigantic party house. And it's unsupervised. That's the biggest thing. And you know, when there's 10 people that rent it, there might be 30 to 50 people that show up. Sometimes there's 15 to 30 cars out lining all the way down to the next block. And when these people come home from the bars at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're waking up every person they walk by because they're loud and they're screaming and everything else. I don't support the zoning thing, you know, whatsoever, the RT zoning. I think it should stay the way it is. It's already rented in the back. I'm totally fine with it being rented in the front. We have renters that live next to us on the other house. I'm friends with them. I hang out with them and go over to their house and go out to dinner with them once in a while. I would love to have that happen on that side. We had that when Jay lived there. You know, we got along very well, but he no longer lives there. And now it's this big rental. So I don't want to keep going on, but my biggest thing is I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe in my house. You know, every Friday I have to sit in my window and stare to wonder what's going to happen this weekend. Every car that pulls up, we have a dog. If you own a dog, every single vehicle that dog doesn't recognize, he barks all night long. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh my gosh, this has to stop. For 22 years, I've even told David, the building inspector over here, I've never even been in this room or this building besides to talk to David when I'm working on my house. I've never been to one of these meetings, but I felt compelled to come here because I just don't feel that this sets a precedent for anybody. in this town, and I think if it was done correctly now, in the future, people would not try to attempt this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Kevin Urbeck, Haywood, Carey, and Anderson. I'm the attorney for the applicant here, Jay Clarain. I'm going to have him comment on some of the allegations about the activity at the property, but just to give you a little bit more background of what we're specifically requesting here. It's currently zoned as R1 single-family residential. The application for today for consideration is purely to have it rezoned to RT. There's been numerous discussion previously about how this is a business, how that's the purpose of this license. If you look at the section of the ordinance that deals with the RT transitional two-family residential, it has a broad category of activities that can occur at the property, but it also specifically says this district also recognizes residential areas of the city where larger houses have been or can be converted from one family to two family residences in order to extend the economic life of the units and allow the owners to justify the cost of repairs and modernization. That's exactly what's happened here. This property is on 2nd Street. It's a busy street. This is 1.5 to 2 blocks off of the downtown district. We're not talking like it's in the middle of 6th Street, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's right on 2nd Street here. The use of the property is 2-unit residential purposes. That's the actual activity occurring at the property, is a 2-unit residential property. My client currently has the tourist rooming license through the county. He currently pays the rooming tax through the city. This property is also immediately adjacent to RM1 multifamily residential property, which is the large complex, what's it called?
The Hudson Housing Authority, right next door.
The Hudson Housing Authority right door. It contains basically a large old house. It's a single structure converted to have 2 residential living units. As far as the ability to monitor the property, my client is learning for the first time now of some of these allegations that are being made of what's happening at the property. I believe the most recent police report that did occur at the property was on August 3rd of this year. And having reviewed that report, you can clearly see that the police officer went out there, had no idea why the complaint was being made, showed up, and there was basically no problem occurring at the property. I also provided earlier today, which I just received, a letter from Brian Helland. He is the resident at 1030 2nd Street. He's directly across the street from this property. I'd like to have that be part of the record if David Gray or Mike Johnson hasn't provided that already. He purchased his home shortly after Jay bought his house. He said he could not be more blessed to have such great neighbors, including Jay. After moving in with his fiance, Jay rented the property. He's taking care of the property. He cannot say this about many other rental properties on the street. He's always been easy to get a hold of, is a blessing to him. He said, I'll hope you'll rule in his favor in regard to this matter. Again, the purpose of this is rezoning for a RT zoning district. One of the intended specific uses referenced in that section of the code is for 2-family residences. I'm going to have my client provide some information about these allegations that have been occurring. He has some more background on that.
Sure. My name is Jay Clarain. I own the 1031 2nd Street property. Just a couple of prefaces before we get started. I've been working with the city and David Gray for almost 4 years now on this property and running it as an Airbnb property. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure it's compliant with all the bed and breakfast codes, which it was originally licensed for. I did, unlike what was said, I did live in the property for 3.5 years prior to moving out with my fiance, which we just got married on Sunday. So I do have a permanent renter in the back. So to say it's unsupervised is absolutely not the case. It is supervised from the back by a couple that I work with and speak to almost on a daily basis. And so to say it's not supervised or I'm completely unaware of what goes on in the house. They share walls with these renters that come in and rent this property. So they are much more privy to everything that goes on in that house. I've updated my website for Airbnb to dictate a maximum of 10 residents. I've also updated my website to discuss quiet hours of being 8 o'clock in the city of Hudson per the, I believe it's construction code that requires quiet hours after 8 p.m. I've installed the Ring doorbell so I can have immediate feedback from any guests that are on the porch at any time. It notifies me, and I have immediate feedback that I'm able to work with or discuss anything that is going on with the guest. I was made aware that Mr. Mackey had a physical altercation with, or an almost physical altercation with a guest. I've discussed it with him numerous times. Please, if there's ever an issue before it becomes even an issue, shoot me a message. I have everyone's phone number. I can give them an immediate phone call and discuss it immediately with the renters. I have all of their names, information, their guest. It's all public information on the Airbnb site, so I can have immediate feedback with the guest by a simple phone call. I've asked him to please not confront the guest, to please just give me a message and I'll immediately deal with it. There's been virtually no time that I have not been able to be responded to. 3:30 in the morning, I was absolutely asleep, and so I did not know about that until the next day, and they were removed from ever being able to rent again. So I was told by Mr. Mackey that I was not being proactive, so I installed the Ring doorbell so I could be proactive and not just reactive. And so as far as the running over the flower beds, I've also told him if there, for one, I've offered to install a privacy fence. They did not want me to do that. I've offered to put up a small fence to segregate the driveway from their yard. That was also denied. I've said if there's ever any damage, please let me know. I'll immediately make sure that it is repaired. I'll pay for it. I will make sure to get a landscaper out and address any issues that they've ever had. I've done everything that's been asked of me from the city up to this point, and I've tried to work with all neighbors and make sure that I'm addressing their concerns immediately. They have my phone number. They can contact me at any point and any time. I am monitoring it now from the driveway all the way to the street with the new Ring doorbell. So
6 parking spots?
I have 6 off-street parking spots for the residents. It's also, the site has also been updated to determine to restrict the number of vehicles there. So the renters are not going up and down the street on public street parking. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
Can I make just a quick one, if that's okay? I'm sorry, I just want to reply to that. When he referred, I'm sorry, I just have to make sure this is all clear. When he refers to the people that are living in the back, majority of the weekends, they're not even there. And all this stuff that you hear my other neighbor and myself talk about, this is in the front yard. And if you've ever seen this house, it's huge. The back of the house is fully enclosed. The windows are usually closed. I'm sure the air conditioner's on. What we're referring to is what's happening up next to the street. The reason I didn't call Jay for the past 3 years was, to be honest, he's my neighbor. And this is exactly what's happening now, what I wanted to avoid. I don't want to be, enemies with my neighbor. Jay's a nice guy. I would never say he wasn't. I'm not that type of person. I don't like the situation we're in. That's why I never called the police. I walked over there and said, hey, that party bus needs to go. Or, hey, girls, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I have to work. After the threats, that's when I contacted the police. And that's why when he came up here and said, well, I've been driving this and that and that, that was the reason why. My wife and I were afraid of this happening. We don't want to have negative situations with our neighbors. As far as, the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, everything else, the part I want to make sure is really clear is there's not a person in this entire room, including Jay, that would want to spend every weekend worrying about the neighbor and then saying, Well, you have my number, call me when there's a problem. I have a life to live too. I work 60 hours a week. I want Friday, Saturday, Sunday to myself. I tried to cut my grass 3 weeks ago. There had to be, I don't know, maybe 9 to 10 to 15 cars total. About 6 of them were in the thing. He has them parked next to my property. Well, what's not known is the previous person that lived there put the driveway in on a Saturday. So the driveway is actually 3 feet closer to our house than it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a 3-foot offset of the property line. It's actually directly on the property line. So when they park there, I can't cut my grass. So here again, I got to go knock on the house. It's about an hour-long affair for every one of them to get out, get dressed, move the car. I cut my grass, they come back. And it's not fair to them. I get it. These people are here on vacation, but I'm just trying to live my life. I want to feel safe. I want to feel all these things. So that's all I wanted to just comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion second to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a zoning map amendment application from R1 one-family residential to RT transitional two-family at 1031 2nd Street. Jake Lorraine.
Has this been to planning council?
Yes, it was at Planning Commission, at our last Planning Commission meeting. It was, there was no recommendation, waiting upon the public hearing, and there was, I guess I should say there was a recommendation that after the public hearing it be remanded to the
planning
commission.
I was just going to reiterate what you just said. It was postponed. They didn't take action until the public hearing.
So you're looking for a motion to put it back into planning?
Yes.
I'll move to send this issue back to planning to make a recommendation.
I would second that.
Motion is second to send the issue back to the Planning Commission. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, is this intended to be family rental? If it's not, then that's a different story. If it is family, and I thought I heard that it's intended to be two-family rental, then we do not need do we need this zoning that allows something else to happen? What are do we have alternatives?
The Airbnb vacation short-term rental discussion obviously is something that our code, when it was established or when we adopted it in 1993, didn't ever contemplate for this type of use. So what we're doing is what staff's requested that the applicant do is to try to rezone. You know, if he wants to continue that use, the short-term rental use is to rezone to the RT district, which is the closest thing we would have that would allow for a commercial type use. We're talking use now at that property. So that's really what the Plan Commission is going to be charged with, and when they come up with their recommendation is, does it meet all the criteria? And then after that, there's still a conditional use permit that would have to be applied for and approved to allow for the specific use. So it's a larger policy question too.
Right.
A larger policy question too. I mean, this is something that we're grappling with citywide too.
Right, so my question, Mike, would be, what is the bigger picture? What are we planning on for the VRBO rentals? I see it that this would set a big precedent, and I would rather us not react to precedents being set, but rather determine our own policies and then.
Yep. So we have a somewhat parallel process running right now with Plan Commission, discussed potential ordinances. We gave them some examples of a number of other communities, both in the state of Wisconsin and in Minnesota. There's some good examples out there. Stillwater has a nice ordinance. I think there was it Twin Harbors? Two Harbors? Was another example. So what we're going to do is we're going to massage that to, recommend that be included in our code so that we can handle the Airbnb VRBO issue. But we also have, an application in front of us too that we need to provide that process.
I think to answer Jim's question, the proposed use or the existing use that's being requested that's behind the rezoning request does not meet the definition of two-family in our code. It's not a residential designed exclusively for two-family to occupy. Maybe the back end is, but the front end is not. So it doesn't meet the two-family definition. I think that's what Jim was asking. That's why there's this application to rezone.
Right. I personally would find that one time a year of having a party like that would be just absolutely horrid. Should not happen, ever. That's totally unacceptable. That in a residential area, that something like that would go on a repeat basis. So it's something, there's something about how this is being advertised or being, you know, I would really wonder about how this property is being advertised for use.
Well, it says right on the
I just pulled it up here. It says that it's parties and events are allowed on the advertising on the VRBO.
Is that within our codes? Something's wrong.
Not in our codes. This is the way that the property is
I'm
being
hearing
advertised.
that. Is that an acceptable use for rent your property out for parties? I don't think so.
Is it possible that this body sends back a recommendation to Plan Committee as well as we send it back?
Absolutely.
So can I modify my motion?
Sure.
I would like to send this back to Plan Commission with a recommendation that we deny this rezoning.
I would second.
You have a motion and a second?
Well, may I just then why don't you just deny it now? Because we are
I
working
didn't
on
know if that was possible.
we are working on a policy outside of this issue. We started this way before.
I was just trying to follow what the Plan Commission wanted, which was for it to go back to Plan Commission.
We're going to
according
discuss it
to-
anyways and try to come up with an ordinance. That's the plan. At the Plan Commission.
May I amend my, my motion again then?
Amendment to the amendment.
Absolutely. Let me, I just want to ask.
Yeah, right.
Ask a question relative to what you just brought up, that parties and events are allowed. I mean, what if it were to, we've got, obviously we have a number of these residences throughout the city, and we're not having similar issues, I don't think. And of course, they're not in front of us asking for rezoning either, so we're not hearing, you know, we don't have the opportunity for a public hearing for people to come in and talk about their experiences. But maybe there's just a way to remedy this by saying, you know, we're not, as even part of our policy, we're not going to allow parties and events in the residential area. I mean, does that help?
I have a verbal, and it's impossible to police that. I mean, you get people requesting to rent. As a verbal owner, if you deny a request to rent to someone, your points go down and you don't show up in as many searches, so you're compelled to say yes to every request. And you don't know, you know, like the rules in mine, dogs can't be more than 30 pounds and you can't be under the age of 25. I cannot police that. It's impossible as the owner to be able to make sure that a renter is going to live by the rules that I establish.
But you would, you put down a damage deposit or some other type of deposit, and can't that be tied to, if there are any police calls made here, you lose it?
Well, I'm sure, but then the people who get it, they just consider that's part of the price of partying for the weekend.
Sure, but like I say, we're not hearing this coming from other properties, are we?
I don't think many other properties in the city have 10, can sleep 10. I
Oh.
think it's couples coming to town to go to an art fair or.
Well, there is that. All right, I'm just a question. I just was curious. So, yeah, you wanted to amend your motion again?
Well, you can only, there's already two motions on the table, your original motion and a motion to amend the original motion. So you have to take care of that first, or I would say withdraw your motion and start fresh.
May I withdraw my motion?
Sure.
Okay, so,
Both of them?
yes,
Okay.
I move that we deny the application for rezoning.
Do you want to give some reasoning behind that, some findings as to why it's not appropriate?
As everyone else has already stated, and Jim especially hit it on the nail, I just think that we're opening up a can of worms, and that's not what we want in our downtown. This is my district. These residents who are having issues with the noise at 3 in the morning, they're my constituents. I feel that that it's an inappropriate use of a residential neighborhood, and to change it into a business, that is. That's what it is. He's obviously renting at the front out for a business, so.
Yeah.
I don't think it belongs downtown. I don't believe it belongs in such a heavily residential area.
I would
Yeah.
second the motion for the third time.
And I think that's a very good point in terms of being surrounded by single family for the most part, which is to be avoided in zoning decisions. It's almost like, well, it is like spot zoning, where you're putting a different type of use in a residential neighborhood.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to briefly comment on this before you vote on that. Obviously, there was a request to have this go back.
What?
The public hearing.
Look here.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, we've already had the public hearing. But you know what? I mean, we have had the precedent here where we've allowed people to speak on things that before us. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. I'd just like some additional information on behalf of the applicant here. There's really two issues. One is the zoning issue. Part of that zoning district, the RT, one component is commercial, one component is two-family residential. The ultimate use, if there are issues that need to be clarified on the use, that would normally be something that would be brought up as part of a conditional use permit. If those are issues that need to be addressed as part of the committee or my client making some concessions about what happens at the property, that's a discussion that we're willing to have. As far as the actual use, though, right now it's R1. What he's asking is that it be converted to a different zoning district so he can do something besides R1. The specifics of that, I think, can be addressed in a different context.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Mike, anything? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. All right, public hearing on a zoning map amendment application from B2 General Commercial to RM2 Multiple Family Residential, and comprehensive plan amendment from General Commercial to Medium Density Residential at St. Croix County Tax Parcel 236-2070-03-031, Land Dev Co. of Hudson LLC. It's a public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a comment? Anyone like to make a comment? Anyone like to make a comment?
Jeff Mazinski, 1417 Wheatgrass, Hudson. When they started this building back there, you guys already went through the multi, and they wanted to bring it down to this R1 factor. Now they're asking again to go through and revisit it. Basically, there are still no plans. They have a concept of how they're going to do it and what they're going to do, but there still is nothing. If you guys do approve this again, what's really going to be the concept that they cannot do low housing in this? Because once you guys do zone it down to this in a year or whatever, they can change it and they could go down to the low housings, which you guys said at the very beginning you did not want to see that in front. Then everybody decided, hey, maybe we can put a business up there and they can do apartment complexes up there and it will not become low housing. But that is the biggest thing, is when they do go through with this and rezone it, what is going to keep them from going down to something else? And especially, we have not seen any plans, and they've been trying to do this for approximately a year now. And every single time that they don't get what they want or don't get their way, they keep on coming back and they find another way to tease you guys and to bring this up. Sooner or later, you guys just have to stick to whatever you guys are going to say and the way that you want this place developed and close it out as that. You can't just keep on revisiting it until they get their way and everything else. I think it's a waste of your time. I know it's a waste of my time coming here every single time they want to rezone it the way they wanted it the first time through. So I hope that you guys will just shut it down and just keep it the way that it is zoned and leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Good evening. Jeff and Kathy Tucci. We live at 1885 Twilight, directly across the street from the current development, and we are directly opposed to rezoning. A little brief history on this. When this all came together last fall, there was the initial request as part of the development to put in that 144 unit apartment complex. That was denied. The rezoning for the residential development that is going on now was approved. That's fine. Then the apartment area, that approximate 5.4 acres, is now being requested to be rezoned to RM2. The RM2 standards, if I understand the comprehensive plan right, is for 6 to 16 units per acre. The proposal is to put in an 88 unit. The math doesn't work right there. That's 86.4 units, so 86.
You go down.
In that understanding. What I need to understand is why the change all of a sudden now from the business designation, to the RM2. What happened? Why are we asking for this variance? And if we go into a develop it into high density, that's anywhere from 17 to 44 units based on the current comprehensive plan. So I don't think this is fitting. I understand the need for rental units in a city. We were renters at one point in our life. I know as you go down in that memo dated to the Common Council from the Planning Commission, 21 October 2019, there's a stipulation in there concerning that any proposed units in this condominium, 88 unit condominium, must be owner occupied, not rentals. Want to know how that would be enforced? Who's charged with that? Is that the tax rolls of St. Croix County? Is that the city of Hudson? What's to ensure that if you do make this change, which we are against, that something like what we just heard 15 minutes ago isn't in fact going to happen? And then if you go multi-density, if that rezoning does come to fruition, assuming this step is approved somewhere down the line, how big is that unit going to be for 17 to 44 units per acre? How tall is that going to be? And how does that stack up to the comprehensive plan for the maximum height of units in the city? So I would say, from my perspective, and I think speaking for the people in the units that I'm in, the development I'm in, I strongly oppose and urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Okay.
other comments?
Well, I have some that we said we both come up and kind of share our own little thing. In the fifth paragraph of the Planning Commission letter to the City Council or Common Council, it states it should be noted that in the event the property is rezoned as requested, future development or redevelopment would have the zoning allowance to create significantly more density and construct a building up to 75 feet in height. Why are we putting that in there? I mean, we just heard the wastewater people say, you got 20 years or 7,000 people. What are we in a hurry about? I've got something here that was just in the paper last week that states that the city of Hudson wants to get input about how the city should be zoned for additional people to live here, and that they want to start making their comprehensive plan, because it's only a 10-year plan from 2009 to 2019. They want to start working on it. Well, where's the opportunity for people to have the input if we're in such a hurry to do some of these things? That's prime property there. It's right across from that huge development that's going on. You've got, what, 250 new jobs that are going into that building. Now, they've got the second building on hold right now, but you think of all of these people and all of this traffic, and for what we paid for our property, if you're going to approve it, it has got to be owner-occupied condos. It has to be owner-occupied. Somebody else has to have something in the game. And people that own it and live there will have something else in the game. If they turn out to be rental, not going to happen. And I'm actually glad that I heard what these gentlemen had to say. It was too bad. But I just think that we're doing ourselves an injustice, and if we're interested in getting the public input on what should be done, why are we not doing that? Why are we racing ahead to get this done? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second. Motion and second to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion and possible action on ordinance 14-19 rezoning St. Croix County tax parcel 236-2070-03-031 from B2 general commercial to RM2 multiple family residential, and a comprehensive plan amendment from the general commercial to medium density residential Land Devco of Hudson LLC.
Thank you. I think we're all very familiar with the Lee property over the past year. A couple points of clarification. This request, the original request back in the fall of 18 was withdrawn by the applicant. It wasn't denied. So I think it's an important thing to note that it was withdrawn by the applicant. A couple other things is I did include that last paragraph in the staff report because I think it is germane to what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about zoning, a potential zoning change that would provide for an opportunity for somebody in the future or now. Now, do I have any reason to believe that they aren't going to build, or wouldn't they build an 88-unit condo building? They might. You know, I think they have every intention of doing that, but if we're looking at this long term, these are the implications the decision like this has, right? And you could do, like I said in the memo, you could have a building that could be up to 75 feet tall and significantly more dense. Now, obviously, I can't tell you exactly what that number is because you always have parking that eats into it, you have open space requirements, things like that, but you could have a significantly larger amount of density or higher amount of density on that site. That being said, Plan Commission did recommend approval of it at their last meeting. The project with concepts includes it looks like 3 specimen concepts, the building heights of no greater than 50 feet. They're proposing condo units. We don't, as a city, have the authority or the ability to dictate whether a multifamily product is owner-occupied or renter-occupied.
Then why is it in here?
What do you mean, why is it in?
Well, I was just saying
That,
why is it in here?
that's what the applicant is proposing, but we do not have the council, the city council doesn't have the authority to make a developer build owner-occupied versus renter-occupied homes.
Okay, questions? Anybody? Anything? Is there a motion?
I'll move we approve.
I'm a second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Discussion?
So Nick, do you want to say something about it?
Catherine, do I need to suspend the rules for resolution, or? for-
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you. Yep.
Suspend first, okay.
Good
Move
point.
to suspend.
Good point. Yep, motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion second to suspend, roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Helms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hagen.
Yes.
Motion is approved, rules are suspended.
Now I would move to approve.
Motion to approve,
Second.
second to approve. Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Nick Vivian. I'm the attorney that represents Landevco, the developer on this project. I have Jerry Green with me as well, part of the ownership group of that project. Mike did a nice job of correcting where this was at back in the fall of 18. You'll remember that we came in with Summit Ridge and South Point, the two housing developments, a single family, and the townhome development. And at that time, we had also requested a density change because the third kind of phase or component of the project was to be an apartment component. And at that time, we did request density of 144 units. At that time, we heard what the residents had to say, we heard what the Plan Commission had to say, and rather than kind of fight through that process in advocating for apartments, we thought, you know, let's let the housing development and the market kind of play itself out, and let's figure out what we want to do with that 5.5 acre parcel later. And so this is that later. And what we've determined based upon your feedback, based upon the Plan Commission's feedback, and based upon the feedback of the residents, is that we want ownership. We don't want necessarily to have apartments there. And so the concept that you have before you now is a much less dense concept than we had before. It is an ownership-based concept, and it is a concept that allows for 88 units of owned condos, as opposed to 144 units of transient apartments. What's to keep this developer from moving in the income or in the direction of low-income housing? We've never proposed low-income housing. You know, and in fact, we were proposing market rate apartments, but then pulled that proposal because we think this is a better proposal. So we have moved in the direction of ownership because we think it's a better transition. We think it's a better fit with the housing that's out there. You also know that this property is currently zoned for commercial. And one of the reasons that we thought that B2 designation would be a decent designation for development on this site is because it would allow for retail shops on the main level and then apartments above that main level. And as we studied that concept and as we kind of worked toward that concept, we determined that commercial just isn't a good fit at this site. And so what do we all prefer? I think we all prefer ownership. I think we prefer condo units that people own, that they take pride in. I think we all prefer less dense sites, which then allow us to cut down on parking, allow us to cut down on traffic. I think, last week Mike shared with me that he would be including the statement in his staff report that says, in the future, you can do this. You will be able to build a building to 75 feet. Well, we have no interest in doing that. And in fact, if you've ever looked at the development of a site, your parking restrictions aren't going to allow for any more units than we have here. Your open space requirements aren't going to allow for any more units than we have. And so, yeah, it's possible, and in all cases where you look at rezoning, it's possible in most cases to do more than the proposal. But the reality is that we're proposing to build out a site in a responsible manner that provides for ownership. And even though we could do more in the future, well, it's not going to happen because your ordinances really won't allow it to happen. And so the only reason we're asking for the rezoning is so that we can get to that concept that we're asking for with those 88 units parked appropriately, open spaced appropriately, and transitioned appropriately so that this fits with the character of the community. And I do think, personally, I think it fits better than 144 apartment units. I just think it's a better fit. I think it's a more responsible fit. And that's why we've made this application, and that's why we're asking for the council's approval of this particular request at this point. So I'm certainly happy to take any questions that you might have.
And mind you, this is just zoning because at the same time, we can go through, if it even touches 50 feet, I'm going to have a concern about it. so height is, we're still in control of that.
Yeah, and I would, just to add to that comment, we still have to come back with development plan approval. So we need to come in with the plan for the property and what the buildings are going to look like. One of the reasons that you're provided with specimens is because we don't have a formal drawing as to what this site is going to look like. The first piece of it for us is, are you in agreement that the property should be used in this manner? And with your approval that the property should be used in this manner, then we go back to our consultants to say, okay, these are the concepts that we've provided to the council. We've already told you that this building is likely going to have wings and it's going to have kind of a centralized lobby area. That's our concept. And then we will build it out and we will bring it back to you and we will apply for approval to move forward with the development of the site. So that's the process. So I understand that the residents' concerns that we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Well, you control the use. That's what we're deciding tonight. You will control the building look and feel. That's what will be decided at a later date. And the city council will be actively involved in the approval of the development of this site moving forward.
And I'll just say, I make it very clear that I heard the residents that live in the district that I represent. I heard that, but at the same time, down the future and on that corner, the last thing I want to see is a convenience store or any kind of commercial activity that would mess that intersection up. So that's why I've supported this proposal over the next, and the fact that we're moving more to an ownership instead of a rental.
Anybody else?
Can I come back up?
Sure.
Okay, now, I just heard the planning commission person say that they cannot state that owner-occupied units had to be made. Now, if that's what they're requesting, don't they have to stick with the request? I mean, they can't build them and then make them rental, right? Yes, no?
I believe what the what the community development director was saying, this zoning, what's happening today is a rezoning. And the zoning classification doesn't distinguish between owner, occupied, and rental.
Okay, so we would need to come back, you're saying, for that.
But what the applicant is stating is that their proposal, which will be reviewed by the city, is for the owner-occupied condominium.
Okay, that's a much better proposal. They keep saying 88 units. I take 5.4 acres times 16, which is the maximum, I come up to 86.4. That's 86, not 88. What am I missing on the math? Am I missing something on the math? Okay, so it's 86 is what that should be. Based on your current planning commission information. Okay, I'm just going on record.
Thank you. Anybody else? How are we doing? Oh, Jesus.
When they went to the planning committee and I guess I thought that this committee or the other committee thought that a quick trip on the corner wouldn't be something that would be bad, something that would be good to be able to get gas, to get things down there. Now I hear Randy saying that really does not want business structure to be down in that area. I guess I'm a little bit lost on that. Nick kind of said that he thought that it would be a good idea for this new rezoning, everything else. Well, of course he's going to say that. He gets paid to say that. So, I mean, when he comes up and says that, I think it's something that I'd like, well, he knows where his paycheck is. So, I mean, by coming up here and saying that stuff, does he really mean it, or is that what it is? When you guys go through this, I think we should all wait until we actually see the plans that they're going to do before you guys send it back to somebody. Not that we're going to rezone this and then we get to see the plans, then we get to feel how we're going to do it and what we're going to do in the city. This has been going on for a year. Let's just wait until we see the plans and really see if this is the whole concept and everything that is going to work out for the city and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Well, comments and suggestions from citizens. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a comment? It's your opportunity. Bring up anything you'd like to talk about. Keep it brief. Should not be anything that is currently on the agenda. Are there any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Close that portion of the agenda. Discussion possible action on consent agenda.
Consent agenda items for tonight's meeting are as follows.
Take us to one.
Approve the meeting minutes from the October 7, 2019 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $1,869,299.85. Approve the regular operator license application as listed on the issue sheet. Place on file the September 17 and September 26 Public Utilities Committee meeting minutes. Approve setting a public hearing date of November 18, 2019 for a zoning map amendment application from B2 General Business to RM2 Multiple Family Residential and a comprehensive plan amendment from General Commercial to High Density Residential Girard Development LLC. Place on file the building inspector's third quarter report. Approve a fence easement agreement for 19 Founders Green, Jason and Jill Ellenbecker. Approve the Hudson Chambers Light Up the Night event scheduled for November 29, 2019.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve consent agenda. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Consent agenda is approved. New business. Discussion possible action on resolution 19-19 for a state mandate waiver for a housing affordability report. Tiffany.
All right, so Wisconsin Act 243 requires any city within the state of Wisconsin that has a population of 10,000 residents or greater to provide a housing affordability report as well as a new housing fee report as well per the same act by January 1st, 2020. And then thereafter it has to be updated manually by statute. So the housing affordability report would contain information about plat approvals, proposed new dwelling units, undeveloped parcels, regulations, as well as a calculation of the financial impact of said regulations. So along with that too, the report is kind of connected to the comprehensive plan itself with the housing element. So with that, staff is recommending completing the comp plan update prior to completing the affordability report, as this way the report would have the most up-to-date comp plan references included in it. But what we're requesting tonight is to have a mandate waiver so that we can provide more time for ourselves, since obviously within 2 months' time we're not going to get the comprehensive plan updated. So with a mandate waiver, we would be allowed 4 extra years to complete this. Now, obviously, we're not going to take that much time to actually get this done. We understand that this is actually something pretty helpful to the community. So we'll work on that as soon as we can once the comp plan is updated.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 19-19.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt. Discussion.
I'm totally for it, but I just think this is also important information, so if we can get that a year down the road or whatnot, that would be great.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of other things with comp plan. that
I could
come
see
up,
it probably taking about 1.5 years to 2 years from
Yeah.
now. If that's fine.
for sure.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on resolution 20-19 for a state mandate waiver for a new housing fee report.
So now this is the other part of it. Same act, almost same requirements, except this time it's in relation to our impact fees, which are also going through an update themselves since they haven't been updated since 2003. So they're quite outdated. And with that too, some of the way we've been kind of getting around some of that with the areas in the city that aren't associated with impact fees is we've been using capital cost studies, which are a little different from impact fees themselves. in what they include. So staff is recommending submitting a mandate waiver for this as well to allow us some time to get the impact fees updated in time so we can get this done too.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to adopt 20-19.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on the introduction of Resolution 21-19 and to set a public hearing date to partially discontinue a portion of public right-of-way for Kinnickinnick Street, generally located along 205 3rd Street, Rick and Cheryl Cherry.
All right, so the owners of 205 3rd Street are requesting the city to partially discontinue a portion of dedicated Kinnickinnick Street just south of their property. The property currently doesn't have any roadway on it, or utilities underneath it, so it's just completely vacant land that's not being utilized in any way. The street vacation would allow the Cherries to basically develop a new single-family home on their property.
This came before Plan Commission. It was recommended for approval.
Okay. Move to suspend the rules.
No, actually, this is just a motion to introduce the resolution. That's the process that's required by statute. And then there will be a public hearing with a Class 3 notice, so it can be done by motion just to introduce this resolution, so it's in the minutes that it was introduced.
Okay.
Well, are we making a motion to set a public hearing?
Is that,
It says on to set a public hearing date, yeah.
Oh, I guess.
To
Yeah.
partially, because, yeah.
well, I don't know if they have have you determined a date?
That's December 2nd.
Oh, okay, let's see.
So I would move to adopt the resolution 2119, or to take the possible action on resolution 2119.
Yeah, just to introduce it.
Just to introduce it.
Yep,
Sorry.
and set the public hearing.
And set the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion, possible action on a public participation plan for the comprehensive plan update. Maybe.
Good evening. I'm Bria Grace. I'm a community planner with Short Elliott Hendrickson, and we appreciate being able to work with you on your comprehensive plan update. So statutorily, municipalities have to update their comprehensive plans every 10 years if you're going to do land use regulations, zoning, subdivision controls. So we're at that point. We've started the process of the comprehensive plan update. And state statutes do require that a public participation plan be put into place and adopted by the Planning Commission and Common Council, just identifying what the process will be throughout the duration of the project to involve the public. So that's what we did in the document that's attached in the packet, the public participation plan. We've outlined the many methods that we're going to employ to engage the public. Online methods, in-person survey methods. We're going to try and get out to different events and talk face-to-face with people. We're going to have public workshops. Draft documents will be on a project website. Events and different opportunities for engagement will also be posted on that website, and it will be linked to the city's website. So we are just starting things out. This is the first step, and then we've been working with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee to put together a community survey. So that's going to be our first big outreach effort, is just to get some thoughts from the community on some general questions about Hudson. And throughout our 15-month project, we're going to dive deeper into different aspects about transportation and housing and land use and all the other components that are in comprehensive plans.
What are we looking for here?
Looking for a motion to adopt the public participation plan.
Move to approve.
Got a motion to adopt the public participation plan. Is there a second? Motion second. Discussion?
Who's the second?
Yeah.
Jim.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you, Bree.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action on placement of structures on public property policy.
So we kind of have multiple issues here, but they seem to be fairly closely connected, so I lumped them together. So this came up based on basically two situations. So the first one is that a memorial, I believe it was a bench, was recently placed, and a concern was raised that the bench was placed in violation of our current policy on placing memorials on public property. So after staff received the complaint, they did some more research, and they identified a number of memorials, basically benches, that have been placed on public property in violation of the policy that the city adopted in 2009. So I did include a map of all those and pictures of all the memorials that were placed in violation of that policy. The second issue is that the Hot Air Affair had made a request to the park board to temporarily place an art piece in Lakefront Park for about a 6-month period. So it did go through park board. The park board did recommend to the council to approve. I did include the packet from the park board in the council packets. You had more background on it. When I was made aware of this, actually I think I saw it when it came to the park board packet, I questioned what our policy was on art in the parks. Well, we don't have a policy in art in the parks, and so the concern that raised with me is that I don't like to start doing things without a policy in place that directs staff on how we should be handling things like this. So with that, I kind of put these two together to bring to the council for discussion. So the first item really would be is what do we kind of want to do moving forward? One, we have our memorial policy that's existing that we clearly have not been following. So we have multiple issues there. One would be is that if we really do want to follow that policy, we should be returning the donations received and removing all those memorials from public property. Or we should be, if we're okay with allowing memorials as we have been, we should be amending and creating a policy that would allow them and have some sort of framework with that. The second issue then is the art in the park. So the first question with that is does the city want to see art in the park of some form or another? And if we do, then we need to create a policy on how we determine what's allowed and where and parameters and who makes the decision on what's art and what's acceptable and those sort of things. So I guess what I'm asking from the council is this some direction on both of these on how you want to proceed. And my recommendation was if you want to proceed with allowing memorials to start allowing art, that you allow staff to put together, I would call it a new sort of policy now that would more just basically talk about structures allowed on public property and how we go about determining what's allowable and not and those sort of things. So I guess I'm kind of looking for some input on how you want to proceed with both of these.
I have a question on the first one, the memorial piece.
Mm-hmm.
Is everything that we found within the last 10 years trackable for a payment towards the city?
Yes, we should be able to figure out who provided the donation and be able to return the funds to them.
Well, I'd like to see us separate the issues because they're kind of two big different issues here. The first on the memorial, I strongly believe that they need to be removed and returned, except for the ones that have been approved by council, which would be the fish bench, the rotary clock, the Boy Scout statue. All the ones that were approved through council should stay. The rest of them should be removed and returned. And with an apology letter, if that makes everybody, we can't go down there. These are so many people that could be on a list to be put in a park with a plaque. It does not, it's unfortunate it went this way, it went rogue, there was no ill will intended, but it's a mistake done by the city and we have to own up to it. So I would strongly agree with removing the memorials of the ones in question and returning the money. And I would make that motion, and then I would also like to see a clarification, or maybe we need to revisit the policy on memorials to tighten it up, clean it up.
I think the policy, if that's the direction you want to stay with, is clear. It's just that we didn't follow it. That's on the city's staff side, and actually none of the staff here can really speak to it because there's only one that's been done in the last, I think, few years, really. Okay. The other ones are a little bit older with that. But I don't think that, if we want to stick with that memorial policy that we have, I don't see the need to change it. I think it's pretty clear. We just need to make sure that we're properly following it.
We read that policy at Public Works, and I think it could maybe use a little bit of freshening up. Not an overhaul by any means, but it definitely is a matter of we have to use that. I disagree that we should be pulling out what has been done in the past. If we weren't following our own procedure, you're right, we need to own up for that, but we also said yes to a lot of people. It was our responsibility to be overseeing the department that was putting in these installs, and we didn't. So owning up could also mean whatever's there today stays. Let's not make work of having to find the money, who gave it, when did they give it, are those people around still? Do they still live in Hudson? Are they deceased? I mean, that's a lot of work for the need to remove a lot of park benches. And now I do feel that some of the dedication markers that I've seen, going forward with our new policy, they need to be consistent. It needs to be demure. It needs to be tasteful. And maybe we could go to some of those donations and ask them to come up with a better placard that is more in line with what would match, a small little thing that says "in memory of." And then definitely going forward with the policy. I read the policy. I think it's pretty comprehensive. Again, just needs a little spit polishing, but I would be opposed to asking the last 10 years of installations to be removed. And then, then we have residents going, hey, where's the park bench I used to sit at every day for reading or walk and have my coffee at? People are going to notice that many benches all of a sudden getting removed, and they'll be like,
the benches, return the money, we still buy them. But the plaque has to be removed. Otherwise, there are so many people deserve a plaque, and that's the people that are not. And I'm not trying to be insensitive, but you're going to be starting something that you will never be able to stop, and it's wrong. And you, of all people, need to be careful because you have a memorial down there.
that was a grove of trees planted by the Hudson Urban Forestry Board.
And I have no problem with trees, but this is wrong. All these memorials that were placed.
They were wrong, and
wrong.
council was overseeing Public Works Department. We were not doing our job, and we allowed it to go on. And so it was our fault. Own up to it, but don't make the people who thought that they were doing something good for their loved ones be the ones that pay the price. It was our responsibility. We draw the line in the sand today, no more. Everything else follows this policy that's going to get spit polished. We have new department heads, new people enforcing the policies, and we follow it going forward.
I feel exactly what you're saying. My worry is that to the public, now we're saying, oh, what we really mean this ordinance this time, right? It's going back to what we set as a precedence in 2009. I get what you're saying, that we have oversight, but the process is what failed here, in my opinion. And I would agree with Randy's point. I mean, if we have an ordinance out there, it's black and white. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think we need to remove the placards.
It is a policy, not an ordinance, so it's an internal city policy that the city administers. And it does provide within that policy that the city can evaluate memorials after 10 years. So that it may be I don't know when some of these were put in, but it may fall within that aspect of the policy as well.
So the policy would allow us to withdraw a placard after 10 years?
Yeah, it says, generally, the memorials will be reevaluated by the city of Hudson after 10 years to determine their enduring commemorative value. So the city's in charge of that.
Okay.
Randy, was your motion to remove the memorials, or to, now, am I hearing remove the placards, the things that identify them as memorials?
Yes,
Is that your,
yes. That's my motion. Keep the benches, we can pay for them, or however we need to satisfy it, but the memorials cannot exist. It's public property. There's a list of people that have worked for the city, that have been through the city, that have more of a right to be in it than some of these folks. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It shouldn't even have happened, and we can't go back and fix it. But it needs to be followed.
I can see removing the designation. You know, removing the bench is another thing, but removing a designation makes sense to me. Then we come in compliance with, there are no memorials, which the intent is recognize, as I get it, is recognizing an individual for whatever.
Did I say the memorial, or the designation, the benches and the trees can stay, all that.
I was going to ask you to clarify if it was just to remove the memorials, or, because I think you were kind of.
The placards, the identifying marker.
Okay.
I mean, it's a tough situation because you don't want to bring further pain to the families that are putting the memorials out there. So I think there's a sensitivity factor that I feel with that. On the other hand, I think the point about following city policy is really important as well. And obviously, we didn't follow the policy. But it sounds like there's some wiggle room to remove these placards as well in the policy itself.
To reevaluate them after 10 years.
I think the intent is that even if the council approves something, 10 years from now, maybe as the council revisits something, as I think we've learned with many memorials out there for other things, you may not want them anymore for some reason. But I think in this situation, though, the bigger picture is that they were allowed in violation of the policy. So I don't think that staff is recommending that if you're going to remove, wait till you hit the 10-year mark and then just do it because their policy allows it. I think we just need to do it. If we're going to do it, let's just do it now. All the ones that were not, as Randy said, approved by council, which actually the ones that are approved by council aren't in violation of this anyways. It's the ones that weren't are actually in violation.
And do we know the price tag for that? It sounds like there's a few of them out there.
You know, I'm not sure exactly what the donations were across the board, but I think it was $1,000 per placard or whatever. So we would be returning that $1,000 to each of the original people that donated.
What if we
$1,000 per placard or $1,000 per item?
Well,
that sounds off.
If you want to have it, you have to pay $1,000. So if it was a bench, if it was whatever,
That's
it's still
why the bench.
No, it's just that's what the cost is.
We know that they actually paid that?
Yes.
I mean.
They did actually pay the $1,000.
Really?
Yep.
What about if?
Because we know that the rest of the policy wasn't adhered to, so how do we know that we collected the money?
I think apparently we did that.
Oh, well.
What about if we allowed the current people to go through the application process rather than accept their money back?
Explain.
So these people didn't fill out the right form and they didn't go through the appropriate channels. What if instead of automatically sending them their $1,000 and their plaque back, we reach out to them and say, you can go ahead and apply now, and as long as it meets the standards.
Right. I mean, if the subject of the memorial is a person, in this case, most of them, that is significant to the city of Hudson community and is not currently memorialized, I mean, yes. I mean, if that's the feeling. I mean, I don't know the individuals involved with all these, so I couldn't comment on them, but it is possible that some of them maybe would meet the requirement that it is someone significant to the city of Hudson community. That is possible with some of these. I don't know that answer, so they could apply that way to have it stay, and then it would be reviewed. I would assume must go through Park Board or Public Works. I'm not sure which committee it goes through, but one of those would review it and then ultimately would come to council for approval now. So I guess that is a possibility, but if it meets the requirements of the policy, then I guess that's fine.
How many are more than 10 years old?
I don't know that any of them are more than 10.
None?
I don't know. There's probably 5, 6 that are older than 10.
Oh.
And after the 10 years, are we obliged to give the money back if we decide to take the
No.
No, it doesn't say anything
It does
about
not say that in here, that we would.
Not
be
obliged to give the money back.
If it's over 10 years old,
It's over
that's
10
correct.
years.
Was there a second to the motion?
I didn't hear
I'll
one.
make a second.
I thought there was. I thought you did, but, so, so we're talking about maybe 15 grand?
What are we at here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
What was the question?
Talking about 15,000 or so? If maybe 5 or older than 10 years?
Yeah, I would,
Yeah, I would say about that, maybe.
approximately, yeah.
Roughly that, yeah. I would say about that. That'd be about right.
And Randy, would you be amenable to Sarah's idea that if folks felt that they could reapply under the policy for a significant person in the city, that they could reapply?
They could reapply, but at this time, we got to remove them now, and they have to reapply and go through the process. But
So a
otherwise-
fresh start is what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right.
Out of curiosity, do we know where the funds went? I mean, what aspect of the budget it would have fallen in? Yeah.
I think so.
So the $1,000 that was accepted with the memorial benches typically went to purchasing the bench, paying the labor to install the benches, concrete, site work, so on and so forth. It didn't-
In-house.
In-house, correct.
Got it.
So basically just went into general fund.
Yeah,
to use.
basically. Yep.
Thank you.
So in a sense, we're buying the benches back.
And the rocks.
Yeah. Okay.
Somehow seems wasteful.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
We do have CIP money in 2019 for park amenities that could be utilized for that.
Buying back memorials?
Where does-
I really don't like that approach of, and I don't know my mind on this one, but it just seemed wrong to, the basic money didn't go for the memorialization. It went for the piece that was there, and it's still going to be there.
I mean,
I would think we would want to ask the people if they wanted the money back or if they wanted to just leave the bench there or what they wanted to do. That would be part of the process. Give them an option. The bench is still going to be there whether the plaque is there or not. I don't know.
I guess to make it cleaner, I think you would probably just want to be Senate, right? To
Well,
be cleaner.
I'm open to just, I mean, we're going to have a conversation with each of these ones to explain what happened. And, yeah, I mean, we can offer that we'll return the money if you'd like, or
We'll just keep it.
or we'll keep it, but the plaque has to be removed, and you're welcome to apply, though, if you feel that the person memorializing would meet the requirements of the policy.
And Randy, just a question, what would be wrong about just saying, yeah, we didn't follow the policy, mistakes on us, we're going to grandfather these 15, whatever they are in, and then we're going to police that policy? Tell me what the downside of that is.
That's not fair, because then anybody could go and say, well, you did it, there's an issue there. You've already set that precedent. So why now would we say?
I don't think so. I mean, the council's deciding now, and decided then that they wanted to enforce it. That didn't happen, but I think a council decision now, I don't think you're bound by that lack of enforcement that's happened over the last 10 years. You're making a decision, we want to enforce this from this day forward. So I think it's just something that happened. I don't think it binds you to not enforcing the policy.
I also don't know if $15,000 is worth the time and hassle and the emotional pain this could bring people, when that $15,000 could probably go to a lot better things in the city, moving us forward. I don't know what, I agree with you that I see the problem with the policy not being followed. I agree with you. That's not right. I just don't know if the way to remedy it is to pull all the carpet out at once. Part of me says it'd be wiser and more compassionate to grandfather that in and stick with the policy as we move forward.
Let me ask this, Randy.
But that's me.
We're hearing.
So I should clarify, oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead, clarify.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify one thing, that we had talked about this a little bit. The paying of the 1,000 back, I think, would be it's not required. Our policy does state that it is expected that the memorial will be in place in a designated site for 10 years from the time of installation. However, the city reserves the right to remove the memorial before 10 years. And we do list some reasons why, which include the site's redeveloped, the site just changes, the memorial gets old. But those are situations which they may be removed but not limited to. So we have full authority to remove them before 10 years. We're not required, it would be, do we want to return the 1,000 as part of this or not? But our policy does clearly say that we don't have to. We're not required to, we can't promise anything. We're saying that we intend for it to last 10 years at least. But we reserve the right to remove it at any time, for any reason.
So it seems like it's kind of an ethical dilemma.
Right.
There's kind of a contract with the people that have, in what they believed in good faith, put money up to have the memorial. The other ethical issue, of course, is that the policy was not followed, right? So we know that after 10 years we can remove these. Is it acceptable, Randy, to you that we put each one of these on a schedule and after 10 years the plaques are removed?
No, I just, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because this one that I happen to see is brand new, and it just is the wrong spot for anything.
Right.
Other than who's there. And that's a historical marker.
So that's the newest one by far. Would it make sense to say that all the existing ones except for this one will phase out at 10 years, but this one we're going to remove and return the money now? That's the only one that we'll remove and return the money now, because that is the one that really brought this to light, and it is brand new, and that's something I think we can easily remedy, that one. And then the rest of them phase out at that 10-year mark, which a number of them probably will phase out immediately. And then after that, they'll just roll at the 10 years. We're then making that, we're fulfilling our implied commitment to the 10 years then to the others.
Well, I guess we'll compromise with this. I would allow that, I would accept that on my motion. Or why don't I just pull the original motion, withdraw it,
Okay.
and I will go into the phase of removing these plaques except for the one up in Prospect Park.
The newest one, which will be removed immediately and the money refunded for that one.
And if there's someplace else that they want to plant a tree, well, that's just a whole different argument. And then that we continue to go follow the policy forward and no more of this, because it's just not right for public property to be memorialized.
I would assume that part of the removal of the last memorial, we would suggest you can go back through the process now. And
I would second that one.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
So the next part of that now would be art in the parks. I tried to lump these together. All right, but I understand the separation. My first question with this really is does the council want to see art in the park? And if so, I do recommend that we put some sort of policy in place for this. I feel like that art is a broad term. It can open up a lot of different ideas, and I think that we need to have a policy in place that, one, we provide some semblance of definition and then some semblance of review about what's acceptable, where. I don't know. I don't have the details on what it should be, but in my opinion, just from the staff side, we want a very clear policy on something like this before we move forward with it.
I think
If you want something.
I definitely want to see art in the park, and I also agree that we need a policy. So I don't know if we direct city staff to look at what other towns do with that, or cities. I don't know if we get together and do a workshop and come up with our own. I don't know how to do that, but I think what I'm saying is I think we definitely need a policy.
If you want to move it forward, it would just be basically a recommendation to staff to work on putting something together, and we would. And I think we would probably end up bouncing it through park board for review, and then ultimately a recommendation back to council at some point.
So I would motion that we come up with a policy. That we direct staff, to come up with a policy for art in the park.
So this is where I have a very serious problem. And I know that we have representatives of the Hot Air Fair here, and I want to make this very, very clear. This issue has nothing to do with supporting Hot Air Fair, because we all here support Hot Air Fair. We give money to Hot Air Fair. We promote Hot Air Fair. We participate in Hot Air Fair. This issue has absolutely nothing to do with whether we support Hot Air Fair. Okay? And in fact, I think that there's a way that we can accommodate what's being requested, but not for as long a period of time. I think if you guys look at what is going on around the country, art, for the same reasons we talked about, public property, in my opinion, art doesn't belong on public property because we have a hard time defining what art is. I think Aaron described this pretty well in what he talked about when he introduced this a while back. Think about what people's perception of art is. And everybody has a whole different idea of what art is. And I don't want to be in a position where we make the determination what art is or what art isn't, nor do I want any of our public employees being put in that position, or the people that sit on the committees that we have and appoint people to, of being in that position. We're inviting serious contentiousness, potential, and I would say probable lawsuits. And we're also going to be inviting enforcement issues with our police department having to take care of anything that we might deem is worthy of being in our public spaces. I think this is a very, very slippery slope, and I would hope that this council agrees with me that we should not be determining what type of art belongs in a public space. We're going to have a lot of religious issues. We're going to have just a lot of different issues, morality issues, if we start deciding that we should be having park in our public spaces. So that's my opinion on this, and again, I apologize to the folks from the Hot Air Fair because it really has nothing to do with what you're proposing, has nothing to do with the structure that you're proposing. I think that in talking with Aaron, if you go through the public permitting process for securing a permit for the park would be yours to work with whatever you would like to put in there. And I think that Aaron has even suggested extending that permit for a longer period of time than what we would normally allow, like, for example, the boosters or the art festivals that we have in the park, where they're there because people actually pull a permit for a period of time where they're allowed to do that. So anyway, that's my take on that, and believe me, I mean, I'm very serious about this, and I hope that you guys would agree with that.
I'm going to disagree with you. Not surprising,
So much for hope.
This is a situation where I believe we've got a group of citizens that are highly engaged in our community, and by not agreeing to entertain this quite you know, it's big city art. It's coming from St. Paul. It was installed in a larger city, in a public space. And we should be like cheering these citizens on for being engaged in the community and wanting to take an active role in bringing something really cool to Hudson. While I do understand that this particular installation would fall outside of a policy, since we don't have one yet, I'm going to say that as Aaron gets up to speed, we are going to find many, many, many areas that Hudson's policies are either missing or completely out of date. As an example, I would bet our employee handbook could use some updates. Doesn't stop us from hiring. So do we need a policy? Absolutely. And we should direct the city staff to develop one that we can follow. But for the sake of timing and the ground being not frozen yet, and this really fitting piece that ties in so well with the hot air affair, which does bring people to our community and does bring, I mean, that's a lot of people come into Hudson for a hot air affair, and tying it together with a artful balloon piece of work in the park is a great thing. We can bring more people here. It's about bringing those people. As far as the liability you're talking about and lawsuits and policing, police having to protect this piece of art, well, police have to protect vandalization of our boathouse and all of our equipment. I mean, it's part of what they do. I think that the people who own the art, we could probably have them sign off on if anything happens to this particular piece of artwork in the next 4 months, that it's their responsibility. It's not our gig. If their art is outside and it gets ruined, it's not our fault. We just, you know, that's probably a pretty easy legal document to write. Again, I just think that we have to embrace citizens when they do become engaged and when they do have good ideas for what could be cool things for our city. We shouldn't put the thumb on it. Do I support the forward momentum of writing a policy that would be in place for the future? Yes. But I don't think that the fact that we don't have one now should stop us, just the same way us having a completely up-to-date employee handbook does not stop us from hiring employees right now.
Hello, Amanda Hine I'm new to the Hot Air Affair Committee, so thank you for bringing this up tonight. We totally understand where Rich is coming from for a policy and being able to understand that, and Sarah, thank you for bringing up our points as well. We have an insurance policy that covers the structure, any liability with the structure. We claim 100% responsibility for being able to, if there's any repairs that would need to be done on the structure, that we would do that. We do ask that this is a temporary installation, and so perhaps that would give some groundwork for you guys to figure out what is a policy, what does this look like, does this work for Hudson, does this not work for Hudson, and this is a great kind of treading the waters for Hudson. We would do the installation, we would do the maintenance, we would carry the policy, and so really we were asking for the ability for it to be able to be placed. The Planning Commission did approve it with a site.
Park Commission.
Park Commission,
Board.
I'm sorry.
Park Board, yeah.
And so that was where we were kind of coming from, to be able to bring an uplifting piece that has no religious affiliation. It just really brings joy. This piece sat in St. Paul. It was not altered in any way. A lot of people really took their lunch underneath the spinning, and you guys didn't get to see the presentation of it on a super windy day, being able to spin. People would come, have their lunch, and be able just to enjoy the space, which is what our park is down there. It's really the heart of Hudson. If you look at it from the map that we provided in your packet, it's literally a heart, and bringing that to a heart of downtown is really, really important to us. Obviously, Hudson Hot Air Affair is an all-weekend event. We bring people from all around the country that come to this event and really be able to celebrate something in the middle of February. Where else are you going to find such a great winter event? And so we just really thank you for being able to consider it.
So how long would you expect? You want it up for how many months?
Until March. The big time reason is because we would like it installed before, obviously, the ground freezes, because we're going to be doing all of the labor aspect. Digging in the frozen ground, we're kind of not digging, but in case if there's any placement, it has pillars that are about this tall under it and that are concrete, so it doesn't need to get dug into the ground. But in case if there's any leveling issues, maybe there would be an inch or two taken off and we would replace that, just as it's in the attachment for the proposal of what that would look like, that we would replace the sod if there was a little section that we would have to do. But we were looking just until March. That way it would just really hold over, that way we would hopefully get past that snow aspect and then we would take it down as well.
And then put it back up?
It would go, we would find a new home for it at that point in time. This is really kind of a treading waters thing to see what can we do to bring this piece, and then after that we can move it either to a private location, a different public park, and really kind of assess it at that period of time. That's why we asked for a short term, because we knew that there wasn't really any policy, and this is kind of a new thing for
So
Hudson.
you're not thinking about an annual?
There's always a possibility. If we're bringing in people every year that want to see this, of course, it would be an opportunity. We own the art piece. We purchased it from the people that, the artists themselves that assembled it in St. Paul. And so we own the rights to it. And so we would have that ability to do that at that period of time.
Is it accurate that you're selling sponsorships on the balloons?
We are not selling sponsorships on the balloons. We are looking to add some underwriting for the project to go up. We did pay the artist. It is a commissioned piece that St. Paul paid for, and so we had to purchase it. We took it down ourselves. We shipped it ourselves to save on that cost. So there is some underwriting that is occurring, but it's not a sponsorship and it is not a memorial.
Okay. Any questions? All right, so thank you. I think there are two issues here, and I mean, can't remember everything that you had to say there, Sarah, but there were things that, of course, I disagreed with. This was put in St. Paul for a reason. It's not that they were sponsoring art downtown necessarily. This was in commemoration of the first, tell me if I got this wrong, but this is how I read it. It's commemoration of the first trip that the Zeppelin had made to St. Paul, and it was acknowledging that, so it was something that was specific to the city with this structure. So it's not like the city just says, well, we're going to allow art in our landmark center. This was something that was donated to them because of what had happened with the Zeppelin visit. You know, I'm not, as you could hear, I'm not opposed to having this in our park. I don't know that I want it there for that long a period, especially given that it was, and maybe this got off to the wrong start, but it was depicted as art. We wanted to use art and put art in the park. That, to me, creates a real problem. Now, the fact that it is, let's say, commemorating the hot air affair is a little bit different issue, which is why I thought it would be a good idea, agreeing with Aaron and Mike Mraz, that we do a permitting process, an extended permitting process, to allow you guys access to the park, to use that park as you see fit for your portion of, well, during the hot air affair and a little bit before and a little after. I'm not going to get into whether it's right or wrong, whether it works or doesn't work to try to use that structure 3 or 4 months prior to the event and a month or two after the event to promote the event. I think it works better if it's in conjunction with the event, and a couple weeks before or maybe a week after. I think that works better, in my opinion, to accomplish what you want to accomplish with respect to the structure. But having said that, I think that the issue here, we've got to separate perhaps the issues. One is the conversation raises the issue of whether we should have a policy of art in the park or not. And the other is, are we going to allow this structure, separate from a policy, to be placed in the park?
And we have a motion, just to be clear, motion on the floor has not been seconded for a policy.
Yeah. Ruth, did you have your hand up?
Could you clarify what permitting would look like? Because we wouldn't be able to get a trailer in and out of there. Could you clarify what a permitting process would look like, getting a trailer in and out of downtown with a 22-foot structure would be difficult for us. So could you explain what that,
Would it be,
what you're thinking?
I guess, I'm not sure why would it be different getting a trailer in and out of downtown in the winter?
Getting it into, because you would have to like back it into the park and depending on snow and such and leveling it. I mean, it's a structural issue for the project. But what is it that?
Well, what we had
would that
talked
look
about
like?
when Mike and I talked about this is that instead of looking at this as such a long-term thing, that we would look at, you have your existing permit for the event, and we would allow an extension of that on each end to let you put this in before the event to help promote it, and then afterwards give you time to kind of take it down and things like that. Exact timing, I don't know, but, you know, again, I also don't know how you're putting this in and what exactly you need there, and that might be something that Mike would have to work with you on, is can you clear the snow off that one section to allow it to happen? I would assume we probably could fairly easily, to be honest. Just clear a small path in the snow and the ground will be frozen, which honestly for us is better. We don't worry about damage to the park surface then if you're driving a fairly heavy vehicle onto it, where as of now with all the rain, anything you drive out there is going to cause turf damage. There's no way around it, and I'm not sure when that's going to dry up the way it's going lately. So really, honestly, I think for the city, it's actually better for us that you place it when the ground's frozen, because it will minimize that damage for us. And again, that also then does shorten that time frame where it's not up there, as the mayor stated, for such a long period of time. We can work out an acceptable period before and after to give you still plenty. And again, I'm not marketing for you. I'm just saying, administratively, where I feel comfortable being able to approve something where it's a shorter period of time, it's directly related to your permit for the event, and we're not opening the door as art in the park, where I don't have any sort of policy direction right now. And as far as what that timing would be, we can, I think, talk about that and kind of work through it, but I'm thinking we're thinking something as far as like maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the event, not 2 to 3 months before the event, because that's where, to me, I'm tying something to a permit and not something permanent or even long-lasting, where it's more just directly related to the event, where I feel like I at least have a little more discretion to be able to work through something like that. But the council's here now, so they're going to provide the ultimate direction anyways, so that's what we'll work through.
So, and keep in mind that the permits that are issued right now are generally for a weekend, for a day, for a night, for a weekend. So I think that that's a pretty nice proposal to allow that time period for a permit for the structure to be down there.
What would kind of make sense to me would be January 1st to March 1st or something like that, because that's a month on either side. You really want it up. Actually, I'd like to see something colorful in the park in the wintertime.
In the what?
See something colorful in the park in the wintertime.
That's happening.
Yeah, but not snow. But I think it would be an attraction to it, and it's a slippery slope. I agree about what kind of art or displays you would look at this as a display, perhaps. But the commemoration purpose, there is a major winter. Our major winter event is the Hot Air Fair, okay. And so this really helps promote it, and it actually helps bring it downtown. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so much of the facilities, so much of it's done up on top of the hill.
Is it physically possible to be installed if the ground is rock solid frozen?
Having Urban, I've been president of Hot Air Fair for about 25 years, and there are lots of reasons that we do lots of things for Hot Air Fair. After 25 years of volunteers, many of which have been here, I mean, we've got committee people who've been here all 31 years, started as a chamber event. It's for the benefit of Hudson. Some of the things that you talked about tonight, we most certainly appreciate needing a policy. There is no question about that whatsoever. We, in good faith, went to St. Paul looking at this particular structure because of the connections to our Hudson Festival and to Count von Zeppelin. We've done reenacting with Count von Zeppelin. The Ramsey County Historical Society was involved with program German Fest up in the Schmidt Brewery property a few years ago, and Jackie Bradham and I were Count von Zeppelin's 1860s fun girls. And so Hudson, back in 1998, did reenacting with gas balloons and smoke balloons, and Von Zeppelin was part of the booklet that we still use as an historical project. So it's not foreign to our event to have this connection. We talked with the artists. We have a written agreement with the artists. We can't fly obscene artwork on the structure. It's 14 feet tall. Nobody's going to mess with what's up there. It's balloons. It had no problem in St. Paul. It had no problem with the artists. We moved forward based upon what we believe to be the correct route with the park board at the time. I'm involved and have been from day one with the Celebrate the Holidays Committee, and we watched that conversation start last spring of doing things down in the park, which the park board approved and is paying for the electricity for that project. They're talking structure in the last meeting last week, talked about, well, we're talking about doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. It's not a Christmas tree in the band shell. Their long-term plans are wonderful, but we saw what that project was bringing forward being comparable to what we chose to do when we had this opportunity to bring something to Hudson. In terms of the time frame, the reason Hot Air Fair exists in the first place is economic impact. It was a chamber function in the very beginning. Nothing sucks worse than retail in January, February, until things get rolling again for March. And this year, with rivers being high everywhere, retail has suffered in any community that's sitting on a river because of the flooding and the lack of river traffic. And so we've made decisions over the years based upon what's good for the city of Hudson, the businesses in Hudson, the community itself. And our choice on requesting the longer time frame, we know how to publicize, we know how to bring people to town. Given the window in January and February is when we need visitors to come to town. And so we try to make decisions that were in consistent agreement with what the city has done in the past with other people, what other people are doing right now, and what's beneficial for the community in the end. So we bought this, as Amanda said, it's going to go someplace. And so we, of course, were told to look at Plan B, C, D, E, F. It's going to go somewhere in Hudson. The people that we've talked to about putting on private property says it should be in the park. You want to show off the best possible photo ops is a snow-filled park with evergreen trees in the background. It's going to go somewhere. We just hope that the city council will put it in place that will best benefit the business community and the citizens of Hudson.
Thanks, Evie.
Evie, realistically, how much time do you need? I know you wanted from January to, what was it, March?
Our biggest concern is being able, and we need to talk to staff about what would make the most sense. The places that we talked about, we're talking a pickup truck pulling a trailer with 14-foot tall pieces.
Yeah.
We moved them by hand. This was just a whole bunch of people. We didn't have equipment. We took them apart by hand, and we intended to put it back up by hand. So to clear an area to bring in a vehicle and the trailer to unload them and get it set up again, we just felt it would be easier to do when there wasn't snow piles on the ground. Now, if the city wants to move all the snow piles and help us put it up, we aren't going to argue, and we'd be more than happy to put it up on a shorter time frame. But physically, we weren't sure we could do it unless we did it prior to having.
So it's really not a grand scheme of your marketing ploy for the event?
I'm sitting here waiting to see where Ice Castles is going to land. And we've partnered with Ice Castles for several years, and I'd love to have a great big giant billboard at the exit to Ice Castles that say, "Come to Hudson next." So I haven't heard, I don't know if you've heard, if it's landed. The last I heard the conversation was Lake Elmo. We've gone over there for several years, promoted Hot Air Fair, and they send us their marketing materials, and we promote ice castles. And as I said, we've had years that we've had 4 TV stations, multiple radio stations, all the daily papers. We've made national news. We know how to publicize. We want people to come to
Back to my original
Hudson.
question, though.
Pardon?
I know you do good at all that, so, because you're always hammering me for money. How do you, realistically, though, how much time do you need?
Amanda, you're the...
We asked for the November, so, for the installation purposes, so November 1st was our original proposal. The issue is getting, again, I'm one of the ones that took it down, and I'm not a huge person, so dragging it across the winter ice is not exciting me, I'm sorry. But that's why we asked for November, so we could really get it up. We can do a big to-do about it going up on the first day, and being able to promote it, and then we can continue to cross-promote it to continue that bringing it into town.
Okay. The foggy thing is art, and my art is probably different from what Bill thinks is art. As a matter of fact, I know that. This has been a thing with the community for, what'd you say, 31 years now? I think we could give some leeway to it. I get it. They get it. We need to put a policy in place, but we shouldn't penalize them for it. Art, I think that's where we're getting it muddied up. We're calling it art, and there's no way I want to start putting art everywhere, because everybody's art's interpretation is different. I grew up at the Phipps Center. I get that. But this is an event for the community. And I guess I'm not opposed to it. It seems a little long, but logistically, I don't know. And I didn't hear Mike volunteer help put it up. I thought I heard he just would say, move some snow.
And we were trying to keep it as cheap as possible, so that way the city didn't have to pay for anything. We have solar lights on it. It does not cost you guys anything. We just ask for the time for it to be displayed. And we'll also remove it, and we'll make adjustments from there.
I think the condition of the soil is a real important logistic point, so November 1st is not doable at all.
I have a question, though. Where was this structure in St. Paul? Was it on concrete or was it on lawn?
It was on concrete.
Okay. Is there any blacktop that we have down in the park right now that would fit that piece? I mean, it looks like a piece that people should be walking under.
And it can be built the structure so it can go on grass or it can go on blacktop. So it's versatile to be able to, like I said, if there's a few inches of leveling, that we can do that with the pillars. The plan, the park said, the original, it is in your guys' packet. The place that they thought was going to be best is A in our packet, right across from here.
So it's easy access for photo ops.
And it would not need any plowing or anything, even in the winter, people can still access that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
right off the sidewalk.
Right.
How much time are you going to give the boosters? Randy?
As much as they want, why? The boosters? They only need a week.
How do you know? How much time are you going to give them if they come in and say, I want 2 months,
Well,
3 months, or 4 months?
considering they are
Or
community
5 months.
recreation, you know,
I know, well, and same thing with Art Festival. I mean, how much time are you going to give them all? I mean, because here's the precedent now. I think it's reasonable. I mean, we want to support Hot Air Fair. We want to support all these things that promote our city. So if you do it for one, you know the next one's going to be coming through the door.
well, that's why we have a policies
Yeah.
in place and ordinances, right?
Yeah.
In the perfect world,
Right.
right?
What if you love this thing?
Then you'd buy it.
Can I make a couple points, you guys? So I agree that I'd like to go forward. We don't have any motions on the table, but I love the idea of bringing it. I think it fits the community. That's why at Park Board, I advocated for it. That's why I wanted to have you guys here tonight, so I asked for it at our last meeting. I want to make a couple, I have a great respect for you, and I've enjoyed working with you and enjoy working with you. But I just want to say that I feel strongly the other way, that art would be great. A public policy for art in the park, not just lakefront, it could be other parks as well. It depends on what the policy is. Would be great for Hudson. I think it would be great because it would bring tourism. I think it would raise public awareness. People made cave paintings 20,000 years ago because art is what makes us human. And so it would elevate the consciousness of the city. Now, I understand there's subjective problems. What is art? What is not? I just want to point out, art's already in the park. We do music festivals every Thursday night, and music's art, and somebody's making those decisions. We have the Boy Scouts Memorial up there. That's art. We have the, I forget what they call it, but it shows the history of Hudson. It's by Picnic Point. It's like a little mosaic piece. It's already there. So art's already in the parks. And so what we need to figure out is a policy to work through some of that. The other thing I want to suggest is we've got the Phipps Center. We've got a great resource right here in town. We could have a advisory board. We could have people that work with us. Obviously, I think the art would have to ultimately sustain community values, but I think that's still a lot of different types of art.
Which is also subjective.
Well, we do get elected to represent our community, so.
Okay.
So I think we carry some of the values of our communities with us. So I think ultimately it would go through council, but I'm saying there's resources. I guess I don't have the same fears. I'm sensing fear about the art in the park, and I think it should be looked at as more of an opportunity. I said at the Park Board, and I'll repeat it. This is a great problem to have, and I think most cities would love to have this problem. Let's write a really great policy. Let's set parameters for time. Let's set parameters for all kinds of things. But once we agree on those parameters, I think it would be a great long-term, I think it would be a great interest point for the city. I think it's great for social media. Apparently, a lot of people took pictures of this in St. Paul. Bring them to Hudson. I'm not talking about just this one. I'm talking about future things. So I would say, is it tricky? Yes. But is it doable? Absolutely. And I think, there's cities that would love to have Lakefront Park and have every year a different rotating piece in there. Very interesting. And we got the Phipps, like I said, next door to help us. So I just see a lot of potential. I see nothing but potential and upside to art in the park.
So, obviously, again, kind of a stray from the issue when you talk about art, but it's part of what we're discussing. The festivals or the music that you're talking about, people are pulling permits for, which is what I'm talking about here. This isn't something that's permanent. It's not something that the city has agreed to allow to happen other than through a permit process. We haven't said your art is approved. We said you pull a permit and the band shell is yours for a night or for a weekend, which is very similar to what we're proposing here. But we're even being more lenient by extending the time period. Now, the rest of it, the Boy Scout thing, were you here for that?
No, that was before.
Yeah, well, you may want to go look at the history of that.
Yeah. I'm not against it.
I
I'm
was
saying
here.
it's.
Yeah.
I was here. It's not you don't want to, it's contentious, of all things.
Just the Boy Scouts, very contentious. It was a battle. And and you would think that would be a rather innocuous one, but it wasn't. And if you go through a fight like that, for that, you're going to go through a lot of fights for anything that people want to bring in. I know you're all familiar with, this is what they call it, piss Christ. Who's going to turn that down? Who's going to be in the position to say yes or no to that? But that's what can come.
Well, I think your policy.
So,
I think your policy
just,
can mediate that.
Yeah. Well, again, policies are very subjective and contentious. I just don't. I don't see. If we're going to go down that road, number one, this is a different issue, completely different issue. But if we're going to go down that road about art, my personal opinion on a policy is other than through a permit process, art does not belong in public property, period. Very much the same as memorials because of the contentiousness of it, the subjectivity of it, and the potential for lawsuits and everything else. Just as much, and I let's look at other communities, but and I think that we need to get Kathy involved and certainly Aaron, but yeah, Bill.
I just want to clarify here. I think you're talking permanency. Are you talking about permanent art in the park?
I'm not
talking about something that somebody could pull a permit that probably has a way to happen currently.
It's happening now.
It's happening now. And I think that's maybe what
delineates. Boy Scout statute is permanent.
Right, and I think where I got confused was
Park benches are permanent.
The park board approved a non-permanent art structure, and then the idea of the policy came out. So that's why I'm talking policy tonight.
Park board is advisory committee only.
I get it.
We are to follow policy and back policy.
So back to this structure, sorry, is there any way that we could put this structure even by the Hudson sign on something that exists like blacktop or concrete? Something that we can throw salt down in December?
We've tried to look at what other options might be available downtown. And for public safety, to be able to have parking and walking to it based upon what they told us in Landmark Center. And we visited the restaurants and we visited people who worked in Landmark Center. And it was a magnet to bring people there. And it's different to go eat lunch in the park in the summertime than it is in wintertime. And people are out looking for things to do in the wintertime. And it was such an iconic visual for Hudson that we felt something that would be incorporated well into Hot Air Fair, that we could publicize and we could increase the numbers of visitors and locals to the community. In terms of a policy, and it isn't just a policy, I don't think, I've worked in tourism promotion for decades, and there are a lot of communities who are destinations because of their wonderful community art or city art. Many towns in the West who have wonderful sculptures and trails. Look at Ashland. They get national recognition for their murals on the buildings in Ashland. So not only could it be a policy in terms of how do you implement it, but what's your vision of what Hudson could be in the future based upon whether it's art or some other element that can make Hudson stand out. And that's what we've chosen to do with Hot Air Fair in the beginning, is what are we doing that nobody else is doing? And after 30-some years, we figured out that we've got a pretty good system in place to make it happen.
So this needs to be installed on the ground, not like on a pavement.
We were looking at what was easiest for us. We were like little Egyptians putting up the pyramids by hand. We watched City of St. Paul machinery across the street, but we were volunteers taking it down by hand. We're going to have to put it up by hand. We were looking at what could make the most impact for the labor that we were going to invest in doing it in the short period of time. As I said, we start the first week in January with pre-events throughout the community. And so we just saw it as a longer window of bringing people to town.
It can go on blacktop in general. But the proposed locations were on there by by recommendations. But it is able to go on that. Our biggest consideration was parking and for people to be able to go take pictures with it. It is very, very mesmerizing if you're underneath it and they're all spinning. So it does draw people to come and look at it, if that answers your question.
It does. And when I was mentioning the Hudson's, I was talking about like between the Hudson sign and the bridge that's on the dike. You know what I mean? Some place that you can walk to. Nothing with parking or anything, just kind of off to the side.
Yes, it is able to go onto blacktop. because it was sitting on concrete brick surface prior, yes.
Who was this on advice of putting it on these locations?
I just put together the proposal. I'm not quite sure who necessarily gave all of the recommendations. We did take we took a business survey of local businesses downtown, of people that would support it, and we had a lot of signatures. We had 34 signatures on it in only a few days of people that supported it, that are business resident owners. So a lot of them it was those conversations with the people that actually occupy the businesses downtown that would be benefited by this project.
Gotcha.
And the positions that are on your map, we just took the city map and then took the sculpture and put it in, the structure, put it in different spots on that map when we presented it to the park board. And they recommended the one across from Pier 500 would be a good place to put it. You know, but it's just when we put it up, if we can put it up, is the time of when we can put it up to get to some of the other places that you may not like where it was recommended, you'd like it somewhere else, but we just need snow plowing or, bodies or whatever, because it's a very heavy piece of.
And so your request to have it this length of time really was about, again, on uneven ground. I mean, if we could we just have it on pavement and, salt the heck out of that area? What do you think, Mr. Miraz?
Yeah. That'd be Walnut Street over by the bathhouse. We got cement pad over by the bathhouse next to the pavilion.
Would you be amenable to changing the location?
I was gonna say, if we could keep it downtown, that would be the ideal location. We would be flexible in finding alternate locations for it.
Because we talked about before, we put it on the map of visibility, not just for the people that work downtown, but for the visitors that come into the city that go to Lakefront Park, because it's a beautiful park.
Right.
We did talk about it by the bathhouse, we talked by the band shell, we talked, under the arch.
Right. That's exactly where I'm thinking of, what says more than Hudson than that area, right?
Mike, is there any issue with that?
Other than going Dyke Road.
The only issue is we do maintain that stretch.
The dike?
The Dyke Road stretch. Yeah. We do plow it. We plow the trail for Lakefront Park as well during the winter months. So if we could offset it somehow
to
one
the
side or
north
the
on the
other.
grass there?
Yeah, something like that. That would probably be the best. So we could get a pickup truck around.
So they can drive right in there with it.
Yeah, right.
Well, that seemed logical there.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. All right, is there anybody that hasn't said what they want to say?
I would like to just add that having the longer period of time this year, while it might not be the same next year, because we don't know what next year's going to be at all, really, depending on the policy that we come out with, that this year allowing them the ability to install it earlier for their ease, and having it be up for a longer period of time, I think is a benefit to Hudson. We have light up night that people come if maybe they want to see it and take selfies. It might even help more our Christmas season with our retail shopping. I just think that, the earlier the better for this one, realizing that future years are going to be future years. And this is not setting precedent because we are about to have a policy in place that will dictate some of the terms of installations in the future. It sounds like we are, because that's actually the motion on the table, which still hasn't been seconded.
So what is your motion?
His motion was to direct staff to come up with a art in the park policy.
Oh, well.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We got a motion and a second before us. Discussion.
You're just saying go to make a policy? This got
Well,
nothing
can't
to
we
do
have-
with that.
There's two different things going on. I thought we were going to talk about policy first, and the sculpture
installation.
second. It ended up being 90% of the conversations about sculpture, so we've forgotten policy. But policy was the first thing on the table, so, because that's what Aaron was talking about, so.
Are we to the discussion point yet?
Yep.
All right. So is your motion about permanent structures or not permanent?
I'm going to direct that toward the city staff. They would come up with the details.
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I think we need to see some policies from other places and try to get some ideas of what's out there and what's feasible. I mean, Kathy and I've already had some multiple conversations in the short period of time here tonight just about our list of issues that we potentially have. So we want to make sure that we can get some policies that from other places that are doing it successfully, try to figure that out. So I don't know what will be in there. But I would guess, as with our memorial policy, nothing we do is forever. As a city, and especially on city property, you always have to have, ultimately, the city council needs to have that right to remove for whatever reason they would like. And I think that'll be an important part of any policy moving forward. But other than that one detail, I don't know. I would need to see more.
I mean, let me just ask. So let's say I paint something and I want to put it up in the band shell, and I want to do it just for a weekend. Can I approach the city and write a, under current guidelines, could I do that?
Currently, no.
Okay.
I mean, that is not something we would.
So it's not exactly
entertain.
like the music in the park?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to clarify.
This would be something definitely different than that. This is, art is, and I agree, art can be music, it can be whatever, those sort of things. We're talking about a physical structure sort of art. If somebody wants to do dance art, yes, they can come in and apply for a permit to use the band shell or use whatever, and they can do a performance art.
Sure.
But we're talking an actual physical art, whether it's a painting or a sculpture or a mural or whatever. So this policy would be addressing something like that, because underneath our existing policies, as we discussed, yes, if you have a music act, if you have a dance act, if you have something of that nature, we do at least have a policy in place where you can come in, apply for what you want to do, rent that area for a set period of time to do so. This would be something different. This would be a physical piece of art that we would have to have a policy to try to figure out, which I don't know what that's going to look like yet. Because I got a lot of questions on it still, so, yeah.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
I'd like to move that we allow Hudson Hot Air Fair to install
Uplift.
this current piece of art for the period of mid-November through beginning of March.
Can I clarify the motion just to make sure that this is as an extension of their existing event permit? I think that's about for me, I would like to see it that way, because then we're not actually talking about any sort of art in a park or any potential precedent setting or anything like that. All we're doing is we're going to allow something as an extension of an existing event permit, if we're going to allow it.
Up at EP Rock, their existing event?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
And we have intentionally not given you our permit application yet until we knew the results of this conversation. Plus, there's another event that is being discussed to be held in the park that we're going to be asking for permission to, that we can tie the whole thing together this year. But it's a new event with someone here in town who wants to do something in the park.
Second?
Where's it going to go?
I don't think the council needs to decide the location, personally. I think it needs to go somewhere that the people think it's going to attract people to Hudson to come and spend money in the stores and take selfies and post them online. I think we could,
So they could work with city staff to work the details out.
I think the location can,
I would encourage that we look more strongly at it being in a hard surfaced area that can be cleaned. You know, that You're not, I don't think you're going to want people walking through there and building up ice piles and snow piles. That's going to be, you're going to have a tremendous maintenance issue, and the city doesn't want any part of that. So we really need to step back and look at that hard surface area. There's been 3 good suggestions tonight that were hard surface areas that you could clean, and I think we need to look at that. I had originally was not thinking that way at all, but I think there's a really strong reason to do that. So we need to. I don't know how we do that, but somebody needs to.
If I may,
weigh the pros and cons of that.
If I may, going after Sarah answers the phone. If I may bring it back, the discussion that I thought that I was having with the Hot Air Affairs, their wanting of the structure to be up in November was more about the location and putting it on uneven ground. So that was sort of the conversation then. How about a hard surface where people could interact with it, go underneath it? Would they be amenable to that? Yes. Shorter time frame, I think. And so I thought that was a solution to having a shorter window of time so that we don't have boosters coming out or any other great organization within our city asking to put up something for 8 months or whatever. So I thought that's where we were landing with that conversation, but I could be wrong.
I didn't track that exactly. I think utilizing it for, at least from light up night onward, to get it, have the opportunity to be a part of our holiday celebration, getting posted on social media, Facebook posts with people in the picture with that thing. I think it's great.
You know, Bill brings a good point up, though. If you put it under the arch off to the side, to the north, that's where the carriage rides start, and you get a lot of foot traffic there, so you should have suggested strongly put it there.
Okay.
We can work with Mike.
Because he clears it out anyways.
And because we totally understand the snow plowing situation and everything like that too, and the logistics of it. So we can talk to him on
That'd be the place to put it.
his recommendations too.
Yeah.
Not to cause further issues, but you mentioned something about more art that you want to bring in as part of this. Should we be having a bigger conversation? Right?
I said that there's conversation of having an
event. I'm sorry. I thought you said we're going to bring more art for this event.
Having an event in conjunction with Lakefront Park so that we show it off.
The slippery slope was happening really quickly all of a sudden. Okay. Thank you.
No.
All right. I just wanted to make sure.
It's down there. It's down there.
So what was the time frame in the motion?
Mid-November to beginning March.
So you're trying to encompass light up night and then.
And the holiday season. Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. But I think you should strongly suggest they put it.
And
we don't care when it comes down after Hot Air Fair, but January and February are the softest months for retail in town. So if it's there and it's a heck of a lot of work to put it up and take it down, why not take advantage of something that we can market throughout the winter to try to increase traffic to town?
And I think to clarify, if you're going to approve, I think staff would prefer it on a hard surface. I think just for multiple reasons.
Not
on, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think we've kind of discussed this a little bit internally. So that would be, if you approve it, that would be what we are going to approve as well. Then.
All right, everybody good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Item F, I'm going to pull. This was, it's worded little inaccurately, and it's also premature right now, but this will be coming back. Discussion and possible action on the application for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation 2020-2021 multimodal local supplement MLS grant.
Good evening. I'll make this brief. So this is in response to all the emails that all of you have been sending me about this grant money that's been made available through the state, the MLS program. I'm here tonight to just have council approve a motion for staff to move forward with the identified projects. There's a maximum of 3 that you can apply for. 11th Street Bridge expansion, which SCH is currently doing a conceptual design and cost estimate on. The 2nd Street Trail expansion, south to I-94, and then the South Carmichael build out from Brecken to Cooley Trail, which would also include an off-street trail that would connect down to the elementary school on the south side of town. So if those are the projects that staff identified, we have capital cost studies for the Carmichael one. We have SEH looking at the cost estimate for the bridge, and then our new city engineer can put a cost estimate together for the trail expansion to the I-94. So those 3 staff feel are kind of in the chute and ready to go. So just looking for approval to proceed with applying for this grant.
So move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Mike. Discussion possible action on adopting ordinance 15-19, amending Hudson Municipal Code, Chapter 106, Building Construction and Fire Prevention.
Good evening. The state of Wisconsin is working towards more uniform enforcement throughout the state, and part of that process, they're going to start to require that all commercial electrical construction be inspected as of January 1, 2020. And to administer that process, they're asking communities to say, are you going to be inspecting commercial electrical? Who's going to be doing that enforcement? Do you have the appropriate ordinances in place? So I'm looking to get this ordinance adopted so we have all things in place, and then draft a letter that we can send to the state saying that we do in fact have someone here that can do the inspections, and we plan to continue enforcement as of January 1, 2020.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hogan.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance 15-19.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Communications from the mayor, just an announcement. The annual courtesy parking that we have for the holiday season is going to be, it used to be 2 hours because of the new parking rules that we have. We're going to make it 3 hours from 8 a.m. November 27th to 10 a.m. on January 2nd, 2020. Anybody have anything else? Aaron?
Can we quickly introduce the new city engineer since he sat through all this?
Sorry.
Oh, that poor guy. We could have done that at the front of the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't anticipating coming up here. So, hi, my name is Dean Chamberlain. I'm the new city engineer. I'm looking forward to working with you all and introducing myself after we're done here as well to each of you. So, feel free to contact me. I know some of you already have about various things. So, looking forward to working with you all. Thank you. Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.